Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you for joining me on Talk Drive. There's so much to talk about, especially the fallout from the Bondi Beach attack. There's so many eyewitnesses coming forward. There are so many stories of the hero who wrestled the gun off the gunman. There's so many stories as well, so much detail about how radicalised those horrendous terrorists were, and reaction from around the world as well, including here in the United Kingdom from our Prime Minister. We'll get to all of that. We'll be talking as well throughout the show about issues here in the UK too, certainly about Bondi and the effect that it's had on Jews here in the UK and others as well. We'll talk about Labour admitting the small boots plan is not working as 40,000 migrants crossed the channel this year, 737 in one day. Also, Danny Kruger and the 4 other Reform MPs writing to Keir Starmer demanding he prevent a puberty blocker trial from going ahead. The doctors are going on strike. They've decided that it's happening. We'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about migrants using trauma to seek shorter sentences for sex offences. Yes, really, they're saying they have post-traumatic stress disorder and therefore they should be given lighter sentences. We'll talk about Britain already on the front line against Russia, according to the MI6 chief as well. So much to discuss. I want to get your reaction. I can see the phones going already. Please do get in touch. 03444 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk Drive. Well, there are so many stories coming out of Bondi and what happened with that horrendous attack when 2 gunmen shot so many people yesterday. Some of the statistics really are shocking. 16 people have died, including a child, and one of the gunmen has died as well. We'll shed no tears over that. A further 42 people were taken to hospital for various conditions. 5 of them remain in critical condition. The victims who have been identified include a 10-year-old girl called Matilda, a former police officer, rugby volunteer and photographer called Peter Mager, a father and husband, Tibor Weitzen, the secretary of the Sydney Beth Din, Rabbi Yaakov Leviton, a prominent Sydney Rabbi Eli Schlanger, a Holocaust survivor called Alex Kleitman, an assistant at Bondi's Wellington Street Synagogue, Reuven Morrison, and a French Jewish man called Dan Elkayam. There are so many stories coming out. I just want to play this clip from an eyewitness about what happened, the horror unfolded yesterday.
Can you tell me what happened?
Yes, there was 2 shooters, one on the bridge, one under the bridge. Just started to shoot for 20 minutes. They shoot, change magazine and just shoot. Simple as that. 20 minutes, was 4 policemen there. Nobody gave fire back. Nothing, like they froze. Like for, it looked like 20 minutes. Like, and they shoot, the guy changed magazine. I look at him all the time. I was doing my babies under me and I look at that. And it's just rifle and a pistol. And just shoot. And the other one was under. They started to come close to the audience. I think one of the people took his rifle and shoot him. That's one of them. That's what I saw. I didn't know how much I saw, but...
Who were they targeting?
Oh, all the crowd. Anyone. Jewish. Just shoot. Doesn't matter who. Men, all, kids, everyone.
Absolutely horrendous, that testament of a man there who was on the beach. Our own Prime Minister has been reacting to this. This is what Keir Starmer has to say.
This is clearly not an isolated incident, and these incidents are chillingly focused on some of the holiest days in the Jewish calendar. And of course we have in our minds Heaton Park here in the United Kingdom in October. And I want to reassure our Jewish communities here in the United Kingdom that we will take every step that we can, use all of our powers to make sure they're safe and secure as they should be in the United Kingdom. We'll continue our discussions after the session today.
Alex Candler is the spokesman for the Embassy of Israel in the UK. Alex, thank you for joining me on the programme today. Your Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, your President as well, various political figures have been critical of Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, for his lack of preparedness, for their reaction to this as well. There are so many statements coming from so many political figures that don't mention words like anti-Semitism, words like terror, words like massacre. I just wonder what your thought is on the UK's reaction to this, Alex.
Well, I think here in the UK we've experienced something very similar. First, shalom, Peter. But yes, I think the UK has had its moment with Manchester. There was a sort of a reckoning for a couple of days. Unfortunately, it did not reach Australia, something that we in Israel warned everyone about, both Australia and the UK and other countries, that the incitement on the streets for the past couple of years, calling for globalizing the Intifada or for from the river to the sea will lead people to do this.
Because that's exactly what happens, isn't it? If people say globalise the Intifada, and then that's exactly what these perpetrators have done. They have globalised the Intifada. They have taken an argument, they have taken anti-Semitism, and they have taken arguments about what your country may or may not have done in reaction to one of the most horrendous terrorist attacks on the 7th of October. And they're taking it out on innocent Jews who are in Australia.
Absolutely. What you see is people in a beach celebrating Hanukkah have nothing to do with what is happening in the Middle East, thousands of miles away from them, being gunned down by people who brought the Middle East to them. It's disheartening to see it. It happened here in the UK. It happened in Australia, and it might happen again and again. I think we saw it in the 2010s happening in Christmas markets across Europe. This is not surprising. This just another round of the same terrorism that was designated by ISIS, and now it's shown towards Jews in Australia or here in the UK. So you shouldn't be surprised by people shouting, globalize the Intifada, and then a father and a son grabbing their shotguns and going to kill Jews on a beach.
You're right about the Christmas markets as well. We saw a plot foiled in Germany over the weekend in that regard. When you hear Keir Starmer, when you hear those words from Keir Starmer saying that he wants to reassure Jewish people in this country, do you, as a Jewish person living in the UK, do you feel assured by that? Does the Israeli government feel that Jewish people in this country, who they have strong links with in many cases, are protected, are being looked after this Hanukkah?
I think actions speak louder than words. We need to see action. We need to see a harder hand and a harder stand from the government, from police, against the people who shout Action for Palestine or the Palestine Action Group, or again, globalizing the Intifada. It sounds like rhetoric, but for the past couple of years, it was more than that. It was a battle cry, and we see the fruition of it. So we definitely should take more note of how people speak, and we need to be very cognizant of the fact that their freedom of speech turns into action and then kills people.
Tell me about your reaction to the possible theories around this, that Iran may have been involved, that other countries in the Middle East may have provided inspiration, that these people who perpetrated this may have been radicalised by foreign governments. Is the Israeli government helping the Australians to try to get to the bottom of this?
Yes, we are also in contact with the Australian government regarding this, and also with other governments, including the UK, regarding terrorism and organization of terrorism by state actors, specifically Iran. I think especially European countries and the United Kingdom amongst them, can look away from what Iran is doing, the way it's sponsoring terror through hiring gangs of Kurds in Sweden and in Norway. Then those people hire other gangs to operate in other countries. The way the Iranians operate with their intelligence services is extremely interesting in the sense of it's not normally what you would expect for an intelligence service. What you would see is them just financing, giving the go-ahead, and sometimes providing a target but not caring how it's going to be done. And we've seen it in other places around Europe. We've seen it in Germany. Actually, someone who was arrested, a Hamas member, was arrested here in the UK and extradited to Germany not too long ago, in the same pretenses that he was working with state-sponsored terrorism in order to hurt targets, amongst them Israeli and Jewish, but not just us. The canary in the coal mine couldn't be a better saying regarding what is happening to the Jews, which will eventually trickle down to others.
Because you're right, isn't it? This isn't just about Jewish people. This is about our Western way of life. This is about the values that people have. This is about family celebrations on a beach, the most innocent possible thing in a children's playground. Can you tell me just finally how people in Israel are reacting to this? Because there is so much solidarity, of course, between Israelis and Australians, certainly today.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw people in Israel go and erect a vigil in front of the Australian embassy. This was headline news in all Israeli papers and TVs throughout yesterday and today. It's the first day of Hanukkah. It's a very family-oriented, community-oriented celebration. We light candles together in a beautiful festival of light. So we have a lot of feelings toward our fellow Jews in Australia, but also towards Australia as a whole and all the people in Australia. When terrorism that we are unfortunately used to in Israel comes to other places, we have great affinity towards the people who are experiencing the brunt end of it.
Alex, thank you. That's Alex Gander there, who's the spokesman for the Embassy of Israel in the UK, and very happy Hanukkah to you as well and to your family. Alex, thank you for that. I want to speak to Caroline in London, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Caroline, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Sorry, I'm a little bit emotional.
I don't blame you, Caroline. It's been a really emotional kind of 24 or 36 hours for so many people seeing those horrendous attacks.
Yeah, and also anger. I don't want to hear one word out of any single politician. I'm sick of their rhetoric, the same old words we've heard day after day, week after week, year after year. We want action. I want all these protests banned. I want them locked up. I don't care what they do. The whole of London now is not safe even for non-Jews to walk at the weekend. The vermin, the vile language that's coming out for over 2 years now, no, there's no action. And what Julia said on her show this morning said it all. No one's saying what we need to say. Get rid, number one, of the Muslim Brotherhood. Number two, we have been overtaken by Islamists. That's not Muslims. I've got Muslim clients, lovely people. They're leaving the country. They told me they can't speak out. They're part of go to their mosque. Their iman is lovely. They're too scared. They are leaving the country. They are not part of Islamism. And I'm sick and tired of the British being called far right. They are not dealing with the problem. And it's going to happen.
Oh, Caroline, are you still there?
I am.
Yeah, listen, I think I hear your frustration. And I feel that frustration, Caroline. I feel how incredibly frustrating it is when there are people who say things like globalise the Intifada from the river to the sea, and they are not picked up by the police. They are not arrested for inciting racial hatred, which is what I think they're doing. And then you can see a very clear line between people who think that, people who say that, and what happened in Australia. Caroline, thanks for your thoughts today, and I really do appreciate them, and I agree with every single one of them. That was Caroline in London there. Donna's in Birmingham and says, hi Peter, I'm just amused that governments around the world are shocked and horrified that this has happened in Australia. These are the same countries that allow the Jew hate marches to go ahead every weekend. This was inevitable. That's Donna in Birmingham. And Donna, I agree with you. I also you're not the first person who said that to me, and there is a sort of an air of resigned kind of acceptance, not even acceptance, but annoyance, but a resignation from so many of my Jewish friends who say this was inevitable. Manchester, the synagogue attack was inevitable. This was inevitable. If you allow this hate, if you allow these people to say these things, well, guess what? People are going to act on it. Not all of them, but some of them absolutely will. Amanda in London says, I can only pray that Bondi atrocity, which has appalled the world, will be a wake-up call to take long overdue action and end the medieval slaughter of innocent men, women and children, says Amanda. And Mark in Liverpool says the only thing that can be done to stop these attacks is to ban Islam. We cannot allow this evil ideology to continue. Mark in Liverpool there. Mark, I disagree with you. I don't have a problem with people who are following the Islamic faith. What I do have a problem with is Islamism, those who have this vile adherence to things like Wahhabism, things like the corruption of Islam, the fact that there are so many people who want to use Islam as a basis to kill Jewish people. There are many peaceful Muslims in our country, and we have to be realistic about that. We can't go around banning peaceful religions or people who adhere to religions and are peaceful within that. Dan in Epsom says mass immigration from the third world, especially the Islamist third world, is destroying Britain, Europe and Australia. That's Dan in Epsom. We'll take more calls about this. We'll also talk as well to a former Israeli government spokesman, Elon Levy, who'll be with me in just a second. Plenty more to talk about on all of these issues. Stay with us.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Elon Levy is with me now. He's a former Israeli government spokesman. Elon, thank you for joining me this afternoon on this horrendous day as we think about the awful detail that is coming out. A 10-year-old girl, Holocaust survivor, 2 rabbis. I mean, there are just so many people who've been caught up in this dreadful, dreadful attack. I know there is fury from the Israeli government as well over the failure to stop this massacre. Can you just tell me your view on that?
Yeah, there is intense rage and intense sadness. Let's remember the Jewish community around the world is very small. Last night I organized a vigil on the beach here in Tel Aviv so people could come and pay respects, and in the crowd were so many Australian immigrants who had friends and family who were there at the site of the shooting, and so the grief is very raw. Look, Peter, there are two main hypotheses for who could have been behind this attack, and they're both very disturbing. The first possibility is that a state actor, particularly Iran, may have been behind it. Let's remember, just a few months ago, Australia expelled the Iranian ambassador after finding that Iran was responsible for 2 attacks on Jewish targets in Australia, including the firebombing of a synagogue. It's being reported in the news that Mossad had given warnings to Australia's security services of potential plots to attack Jews in the country, and we can't rule out the possibility that Iran was behind this, just as Australia believes that Iran was behind other attacks. But the other possibility is also very disturbing, and that is that there is a homegrown extremist movement that has been nourished by the growing hatred against Israel and Jews around the world in the last few years. And we've seen the cries on the streets of Australia around the world of globalize the intifada.
And do you feel that Anthony Albanese has actually got a grip of that or dealt with that in any way, or simply just let it happen? I mean, we've seen some footage, we don't know whether it's verified or not, but it appears to be one of the gunmen who was shouting "gas the Jews" at a protest against Israel. We know as well that here in the UK there are so many people who hold up signs in support of Hamas, Hezbollah, other proscribed organisations, and nothing is done about it. And that frustration, I think you can draw a very clear line from people who are allowed to do that right through to what happened in Bondi Beach yesterday.
Yeah, there is a feeling in the Australian Jewish community that the Australian government has its head buried deep in the sand and doesn't understand where this hatred is coming from. It's coming from the obsessive demonization of Israel and Jewish people, especially since Hamas launched the October 7th war. The biggest driver of this is the genocide hoax, the genocide libel that is trying to paint Israel's war to defeat the Hamas terrorist army somehow as an attempt deliberately to kill Palestinians. That's what's fueling hatred, and that hatred is being translated into real action.
But there are so many people even within that.
Albanese,
I would argue, Elon, there are so many people within that who are willfully blind to what is going on. Where are all these people who said that Gaza was in a famine, for example? Where are these? Are some of the most pictured, the most photographed. So much footage is coming out of Gaza, apart from people who have congenital diseases, which mean they are particularly thin. And I have great sympathy with them, of course, and I want the people of Palestine, the Palestinian territories, to be fed and have enough food. But the point is that there is not footage, there are not photographs of people starving, because that wasn't happening. And this propaganda is absurd, and it is fueling the kind of hatred we saw yesterday.
You're absolutely right, and this is propaganda that is coming from the highest levels of the United Nations, right, which declared a few months ago that there was a famine in Gaza. How many people does it claim have died of starvation? I mean, they don't exist. It doesn't happen, and the reason is that you have over 600 trucks of aid entering Gaza every single day, and throughout the war, Israel delivered over 1 million tons, 1 million trucks, 1 million tons of aid going into the Gaza Strip. But that's important. For the last 2 years, there has been a vicious campaign of disinformation, some of it led by states, Iran and Qatar, and some of it spontaneous at a street level in countries like the UK, that are painting a country that came under attack on 7 fronts, fighting a terrorist army that was threatening to perpetrate barbaric atrocities again and again, trying to paint Israel as if it's somehow worse than Nazi Germany. And then you see that people take action into their own hands. That is what happened in the UK with the Heaton Park massacre in September. It looks like this is what happened on Bondi Beach in Sydney. And this is going to keep happening unless governments are able to understand that the hatred against Israel, the disinformation against Israel, is bringing political violence to their own streets. You know, Peter, I was shocked. Oh, I wasn't shocked. I was disappointed to see yesterday people marching through the streets of Birmingham, calling for intifada revolution. This is what an intifada revolution looks like. Intifada was a wave of terror attacks in Israel in the early 2000s. Globalize the intifada means do that everywhere.
Yes. And my final question to you is in 2 parts. One is, what do you want the UK government to do to stop the dreadful anti-Semitism and associated anti-Israeli sentiment here in the UK? And secondly, what can we do as people who, speaking as someone who isn't Jewish, to support our Jewish friends and neighbours?
Wow, those are two really important questions. Look, first of all, what can the British government do? The British government has to make it clear that it's rebutting the outrageous lies that are being told about Israel that are fueling hatred against Jewish people. The allegations of genocide, starvation, apartheid, baby killing, white colonial settle, that whole argument that is fueling hatred against Jews, the British government has to stand up against that. It has to send the police when people are marching through the streets calling for intifada revolution. I believe in free speech as much as anyone, but when you have people marching through the streets calling for literal violence, for hunting Jews down, that shouldn't be allowed. And Peter, a great question. What can the majority of good British decent people do in order to oppose this extremism? Firstly, if you have Jewish friends, Jewish colleagues, reach out, send them a text message, ask if they're feeling, see how they're doing, and if they're okay. This is a very scary moment for Jewish communities all around the world, because I'll be frank, if another attack like this happens in the UK, in Birmingham or Leeds or London, or if it happens in Canada, in Toronto, nobody is going to be surprised, because we've seen a wave of attacks on Jewish targets, especially since Hamas's October 7th massacre. So reach out, check if they're okay, and if you're on social media and any platform, speak out against that hatred and help people understand where it's coming from.
Elon, thank you. Happy Hanukkah to you and your family as well, and thank you for joining me on Talk today as well. Patricia's in Bolton. She's given me a ring on 03444991000. Patricia, you're very welcome to the programme today. What would you like to say?
Hi Peter, I like your programme. I think it's superb.
Thank you.
This horror on Bondi Beach is, there's no other word to describe it.
Dreadful.
But everybody's saying we should stand together, we should speak out, we should do this, we should do that. I'm wondering where the Church of England is in all this. Do they not want to upset community relations?
Do you know what? We knew this call, but you rang us a few minutes ago and we've just checked in the interim, and you're right. It doesn't appear that the Church of England has actually responded to this. I know the Archbishop of Sydney in Australia, the Most Reverend Kanishka Raphael, has issued a statement embracing Jewish neighbours and fellow citizens in love, friendship and support, describing this as a horrific terrorist attack on Sydney's Jewish community at Bondi Beach. But that is a very, very good point, Patricia, because it takes the faith leaders here to say this is an attack not just on people, not just on an ideology, but on a faith as well, on people because they are Jewish. And you're absolutely right, we need to hear more from our faith leaders, especially the Church of England.
These are our spiritual leaders, so-called. They've let us down time and time again.
Patricia, I think you make some really good points there, and that is a very, very good point. I'm going to ask the production team behind the scenes actually to ring the Church of England press office if they could and say, what is your reaction? Have you got one? Have you got a statement on this to what happened in Sydney? They're going to ring Lambeth Palace, which is where the Archbishop of Canterbury resides and works out of. And if we can get that, if we get something by 7 o'clock, Patricia, we will bring that to you, I promise. Let me speak to Mark in Manchester. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, Peter, I don't want to concentrate on the tip of the iceberg, which was that heinous, egregious crime yesterday. And obviously sympathies go out to all the families that have lost people and that are injured. My father was Jewish, so my sympathies are really with the Israelis and the Jewish people. But just to make things difficult, I mean, I don't want to say difficult, I mean balanced, my wife's life was saved by a Muslim surgeon. Her care continues really well with Muslim. My daughter was in hospital with meningitis, and she was looked after by some beautiful, really nice Muslim nurses. So what I'm about to say, just that tries to put it into context. I just think that we've been fed a diet over the last 2 years on the media that the Israelis haven't been able to counter. So although they've won the war on the ground and they've reduced Hamas, they haven't won the hearts and minds, unfortunately.
Correct.
You know, the media and social media have just basically given us this diet. Now, how absolute truth is in when you see an Israeli missile hit the hospital, or when you see a starving Palestinian child, however much truth there is in that, I don't know. But that's the diet that we've been fed.
Yeah.
And I think that's given a loss of sympathy for the Israeli condition overall, so that the radicals have become more radicalized. The average person has now got a lot more sympathy for the Palestinian perspective, and the average person who didn't have an opinion and now all of a sudden got an opinion.
Yes.
So we're in this situation now where the dial has been completely shifted over 2 years, and I think the only thing that can save us really is good intelligence from the Muslim community themselves, a little bit more money going into that intelligence, and people starting to understand where the Israeli perspective comes from. We've not been under rocket attack. We've not lived next to people who education system has involved coming across and killing us. We've not lived there. But by the same token, you know, what's happened over the last 2 years is this diet, this continual diet on the TV has obviously shifted the dial massively. And we need to address that in some way, shape or form. I haven't got any answers. I just feel that is what's happened.
Mark, I have very little to add to that. I think that is absolutely spot on. It hits the nail on the head. And what we try to do a little bit at this station actually is just give a few perspectives that aren't heard on the BBC, that aren't heard on all other parts of media that you don't read about. We want to tell the truth. I have, like you, Mark, have absolute boundless sympathy for innocent Palestinians who are having a dreadful time. The war is basically now over, and there is some form of ceasefire, although it's pretty brittle. We want to make sure that there is a better future for the Middle East and for Israel and the Palestinian territories. There is absolutely no doubt that what you say is correct. There are so many people who, unlike you, Mark, and unlike the vast majority of our viewers and listeners on this station, don't listen to the whole of the truth. Don't have the critical thinking that our viewers and listeners have, that you have, Mark, to find out for themselves what is the truth. You're never going to get the full truth. We're not there. We don't know exactly what happens at various points. It's within the interest of the Israelis, it's within the interest of the Palestinians to tell us their version of the truth. But the fact is, I mean, the first rule of journalism is find out. Curiosity is the number one aspect, and I think that what you said, Mark, there is probably one of the most important sentiments that I've heard in recent weeks, and certainly since those dreadful Sydney attacks. So I want to thank you for that, Mark, and I want to thank you for giving me a ring today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Really appreciate that. We're going to talk to Jack Elsom in a second, the political editor of The Sun. There's a lot going on domestically in the UK today as well. The Prime Minister has been at the Liaison Committee. This is a sort of super committee of all the select committee chairmen and women. We'll talk to Jack about what he's been probed about on that, and certainly the small boots plan as well, not working. 40,000 migrants crossing the Channel this year. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much for your company. Keep the calls, text, tweets and voice notes coming in. 0344 499 1000. I want to talk to Jack Elsom now. He's political editor of The Sun, and he's been monitoring what the Prime Minister has been quizzed about today at Liaison Committee. That's a sort of super committee of all the select committee chairmen and women, or most of them anyway. And if we just, Jack, great to see you, by the way. We're just going to look at a quick clip now about what Keir Starmer was saying about military bases housing asylum seekers.
We have got military sites under consideration. Obviously, we need to make sure that they're suitable and that all the necessary checks have been carried out. But we do want, asylum hotels were at their height measured, I think it was 400 or so. They're down to about 200 now. I'm absolutely determined that we will close them by the end of this Parliament, sooner if it's possible. And that's why military sites are under consideration.
Jack, what do you make of that, especially as we had 737 migrants coming across on small boats on one day over the weekend?
Well, good afternoon, Peter. Well, yeah, you're right. Clearly, the Prime Minister and this Labour government are desperate to move illegal migrants out of hotels. They recognise the damage to the visibility of having illegal channel crossers right slap bang in the middle of communities and town centres, and the friction that causes. Also, the sheer cost factor is enormous. But they are also realising pretty quickly that getting people into military sites is also fraught with problems. We've had this military site down in Crowborough, which is meant to be opened at the end of last month. That's been postponed for all manner of reasons, mainly because they found them totally unsuitable. It's actually a training camp rather than a military barracks, and so they don't have the proper infrastructure, they don't have the proper security, they don't have the proper fencing around that, even sort of small things like that. And that is really putting a spanner in the works of the government's plan to move people out of hotels. Keir Starmer said that the overall amount of hotels is down, which is true, and that's good, but also the amount of people in these hotels is up, and therefore people who are saying to Keir Starmer, when are you going to get all of these migrants out of hotels, he says by the end of the Parliament. Many people want that a lot sooner, and at the moment those numbers are going the wrong way and not the right way.
Speaking of getting people out, I'm 3 tube stops away from Westminster, from where I'm sitting at the moment, but I can almost hear the guffaws as Starmer told the Liaison Committee the work to reduce the size of the House of Lords is ongoing, talking about removing 92 hereditary peers, but he's created 96 members of the House of Lords in the last 18 months, so that must have rung a bit hollow, Jack.
Yeah, totally. And let's not forget, this was a Prime Minister who actually once pledged to abolish the House of Lords altogether.
Said it was indefensible.
Exactly. And now he says he wants to get rid of hereditary peers, but also seems to be growing the size of it even more. Listen, the government has come up against lots of pushback from the House of Lords, various bits of legislation. Their flagship Employment Rights Bill, which is back in the House tonight, has received a lot of opposition from the House of Lords. But you can't have it both ways. You can't, on the one hand, say that you think that the upper chamber is pretty indefensible, but on the other hand, pack it, and not just full of experts, but pack it full of Labour Party cronies. We can have a debate about whether the House of Lords is effective in itself or not, but you can't, I don't think, say, this is a institution which is old and stale and whatever, but then pack it full of people who haven't actually seemed to have got big expertise in government, but actually seem to have just done their time in the party. Last week what we saw, various different Labour Party apparatchiks, including Rachel Reeves' recent chief of staff. And the reason actually they gave, which I'm sure will annoy listeners, but to put Katie Martin on the red benches, was rebuilding Labour's relationship with business. Now, I don't think there's anyone out there really at the moment that think that Labour have much of a relationship with business, because business confidence is on the floor.
Yeah, well, certainly when you speak to any business leader, certainly.
And so I just think that the whole debate around the House of Lords now seems to be mired in hypocrisy. And listen, by the way, all leaders of all parties down the years have stuffed the House of Lords full of people who have worked for the party, people who are clearly going to bend the knee and be loyal and vote the right way through the voting lobby. There's nothing new to the Labour Party. What is, I think, fairly bizarre about this is the fact that Keir Starmer once made such a habit of bashing the House of Lords and saying that it was a sort of a cosy club for political stooges, and seems to be contributing to that rather than actually trying to get rid of it.
Very fair point. Let's see another clip of what the Prime Minister has said about the leak in regard to the Office of Budgetary Responsibility around the budget. This is what the Prime Minister said.
Do you think there was a leak from number 10 Downing Street about the budget?
In relation to that incident, there's a leak inquiry going on, as I think
we know, yes, absolutely, yes,
yeah.
the Chancellor's announced.
So that will go wherever the evidence takes it.
So if there was a leak from number, do you think there was a leak from number 10?
I've no reason to think there was a leak from number 10.
So, but if there were a leak from number 10, what would you do about? What would you do if there was someone was
I'd take action. I mean, and I have taken action. It's very difficult with leaks to get to the source of the information.
You would take action?
Where that has happened in the past, I have taken action, which has led to the removal of individuals.
He would take action. Very exciting, Jack, isn't it? I mean, that was just a nothing answer, really, to Meg Hillier, Dame Meg Hillier there, who's the chairwoman of the Treasury Select Committee.
Yeah, and what's the thing more baffling is that he said, I would take action, and I have taken action in the past. And I can't think, I'm scratching my head about a leak inquiry which has ever actually managed to find the culprit.
And resulted in that person losing their job if that was an advisor or whatever. I'm with you, Jack. I can't think of anybody who Starmer has sacked.
No, not Starmer. In fact, the only person I think in living memory who has fallen foul of a leak inquiry was Gavin Williamson,
yes,
back when he was Defence Secretary.
Yeah.
A claim which I think he still denies to this day.
He does.
But I do think this leak inquiry is a bit of a red herring. I mean, ministers complaining about leaks is a bit like, sailors complaining about the sea. It can be very annoying, but it is just part and parcel when you have journalists whose business it is to try and find out what is going in.
Declare your interest, Jack.
Well, exactly, and right back at you. But what I would say is that, rather than sort of blaming this whole thing on leaks, which is clearly frustrating for the government, what it did was lift the rock on pretty big dysfunction going on at the heart of government. On the one hand, and you didn't need a leak to know that. They were leaning very heavily into the idea that there was going to be a 2p hike on income tax, something they had to. Something they were actively considering. Keir Starmer has admitted on the record they were actively considering, and then ended up dropping those plans. So it's one of these things where clearly leaks are frustrating to government and ministers, but it pales in comparison to the wider problem of constant toing and froing inside the machine in a budget which was pretty shambolically handled.
Totally agree. Just turning to another piece of political drama today, Danny Kruger, the Reform UK MP, gave a press conference. Let's have just a little bit of a look at what his thoughts were on cutting the number of civil servants.
So I can announce today that a Reform government will reduce the number of FTE civil servants by 68,500 roles, cutting the salary bill by 17% and saving the taxpayer £5.2 billion a year. That's £4 billion in averted salary costs, which will be realised within 2 years, and £1 billion in averted pension contributions that will be realised in the years ahead.
Big plans from Reform UK, Jack?
Yeah, definitely. And lots of governments have talked about shrinking the size of the civil service, and every time it seems to actually get bigger. Listen, there are clearly lots of very talented, capable civil servants who do a great job, but there's also lots who I think, and you chat to ministers, advisors, who don't seem to be doing an awful lot. And as the civil service has grown in size over the past few decades, it's not as if there's been a matching surge in productivity from the centre and from Whitehall. And so Reform clearly now eyeing cuts, but also, and Nigel Farage has been pretty open about this, I think he wants a more American system where you get more political appointees into the Whitehall machinery rather than permanent civil service, who he is anticipating will probably fight him every step of the way, be a blockage, contribute to that so-called blob, as he would put it, which would probably work against his plans. The only, I guess, risk here, and I think Jacob Rees-Mogg found this, is that when you deliberately target and go after the civil service, then they will just stop working with you.
There are more of them than there are of you. One other thing that Danny Kruger was asked about was allegedly racist comments by Chris Parry, who is their mayoral candidate in one of the mayoral elections coming up, although it's been postponed. He apparently said on Twitter that he believed that David Lammy should go back to the Caribbean, where his loyalties clearly lie. But Danny Kruger didn't seem to have an answer on that. He wasn't familiar with that. We haven't really got an answer out of Reform UK on that story that's been going on for a few days now.
Yeah, and I think with all of these things, it's much better to just address the issue head on. It was clearly going to be a question which they were asked about, and either what you do is take swift disciplinary action if you feel that that is the right course of action, or have a pretty good answer about why you're not doing that. And just burying your heads in the sand is never a good idea. I think Nigel Farage himself, having spent a lot of time with him, is clearly on a mission to try and professionalise his party, but throughout his career has definitely been let down by many people around him. And that problem is only going to grow as the pool of people with positions of authority and power in reform gets bigger. They're going to have more councillors, they're going to have more candidates, they're going to have more mayors, and so the sort of the guilt by association for the sort of the wrong ones who are in every party is only going to get bigger as as reform grows as an electoral force.
It is the most wonderful time of the year, Jack, and we know that a new poll from YouGov has found that Santa would apparently vote for the Green Party and Scrooge would go for reform. What do you make of this, Jack?
Yeah, but did you see the leader column in the Times this morning, which actually disputed that and said that if anything, Santa is very unenvironmentally friendly, because think about all these reindeers who are emitting methane while they're going around the planet, and also the fact that Santa is delivering toys which are plastic and ruin the ocean, and actually Scrooge, who sits in his house barely putting his heating on, is probably much more green friendly than Santa.
It's only
thing the Times can do.
It's a very interesting point, although the point, of course, is, we've moved from the sublime to the ridiculous. I think it's very important I ask you about Rick Astley, who has banned Labour MPs from his pub. We know Jeremy Clarkson has done that as well, apart from the one who voted against and indeed lost the whip for voting against the inheritance tax bill. Now, we did try to get Rick Astley on the programme. He couldn't do it, so somewhat ironically, having said he would never going to let us down, he has on this occasion.
Yeah, very good. I'm trying off the top of my head to think of a pun to reply with, but I could not do it.
Stick with me. We'll be together forever, Jack. Yeah, try. Don't give up anyway. Never going to give up the attempt to make the puns, Jack.
Yeah. Also, Rick Astley a bit before my time anyway. I don't.
Brutal.
I don't even know many of his songs, I'm afraid. But yeah, he's become the latest landlord to criticise Keir Starmer and the Labour government's tax rises on pubs.
Well, we'll see what Charlie XCX and people of your generation think about it the next time we talk, Jack. Thank you very much indeed. That's Jack Elsom there from The Sun. He's the political editor. What do you think about that survey, that poll saying that Santa would apparently be a Green voter? And similarly, what Jack was saying there about Rick Astley banning people from his pub, banning Labour MPs from his pub. Jeremy Clarkson has done the same thing. One group of people I'd quite like to ban from any pub I owned would be junior doctors, any of them who are going on strike in the next few days. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. We'll talk about all of that in just a second. Stay with us.
Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Joanna in Salisbury. Says, hi Cardi P. Hi Joanna. In the BBC documentary with that Hamas leader's child, he was saying there's no food, no water, etc. In the background, there were stalls piled high with things he said he couldn't get. He was a normal weight for a teenage boy. Their own propaganda didn't stack up. And thanks to the tweeter, you sent me a really good message actually. Let me see if I can just find it here. Saying, excellent coverage on the City Massacre. Thank you. Great quality calls too, but I've heard none from Muslims, although I may have missed them. Why not encourage such calls, as surely many of them will be appalled? Well, if you are a member of the Muslim faith and you want to come on the air, you're as welcome as anybody from any other faith, certainly, and particularly in light of what's happened in Sydney. We've seen that hero who is of the Muslim faith, who wrestled that shotgun, automatic rifle by the look of things, off the perpetrator. So it's not... I mean, I've had people today saying ban Islam. I mean, I just don't think that's either practical or desirable. 0344 499 1000. If you disagree with me, that's okay, because on my programmes we disagree without being disagreeable. I want to talk now because we are told this is one of the worst winters for the flu, and certainly there are about 2,500 people who have been admitted to hospital because of what is happening. Now junior doctors are set to go ahead with strikes, despite warnings that lives will be put at risk. We know this. When junior doctors strike, people die. This is a 5-day walkout. It's going to start at 7 o'clock on Wednesday morning. This is after West Streeting made an improved offer to the British Medical Association. They considered it in an online vote. The turnout was 65%, and nearly 3% of them said they wanted to reject the new deal. Well, Roy Lilly is a former NHS Trust chair. Roy, what do you make of this, and what will the implications be?
Hi. Well, I mean, it's a very indelicate thing for me to say, but I told you so. You know, last time I was on, we were talking about this. I said I was very sceptical that they would call the strike off, and you know, I get no cheer in saying I was right. I could just see it coming. You know, we're dealing with a very different breed of doctor here. They've traded off public support for leverage with Streeting. You know, they've said, you know, we public support is not the thing that we're caring about. We want to get our money sorted out. What's the impact going to be? Well, look, the NHS is tooled up for this, I can tell you. I mean, they were expecting this to happen. So they'll be pulling the plugs on lots of elective procedures. They'll be discharging people as fast as they can to get them home safely, and they're going to try and empty out the hospitals. Whereas previously in the strikes, the NHS has said, well, you know, we can probably, if we're clever, we can do 95% of what we would normally do during a strike. They're not going to do any of that. They're just going to clear the place out and make sure they've got the beds. As far as the flu is concerned, it's not quite as it's being presented. And I'm not saying it, as you can hear, I've got a hell of a cold myself. And I'm just very pleased I've had my flu jab, otherwise I might be in hospital. But what's happened is the flu season has appeared about a fortnight to 3 weeks early this year. So the numbers are coming in faster than we thought. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a very bad flu season. All this talking about a super flu and all the rest of it, there is a...
It just means it's here earlier, and especially...
It's here earlier.
And with that in mind, actually, the Prime Minister has been talking about this at Liaison Committee this afternoon. Let's just see a short clip of what he's been saying.
Prime Minister, on a scale of 1 to 10, how gutted are you by the BMA's latest strike action vote?
Oh, very gutted.
Is that 10 out of 10?
10 out of 10. I think it's irresponsible action by the BMA, and not for the first time.
Do you agree with the Prime Minister, Roy?
I do. I mean, I've been against the strikes from the beginning, you know, and I'd like to find a way of making sure that public sector workers like doctors and nurses and all the rest of it never went on strike, and that we had some kind of different basis of employing them, so we didn't have that. But we are where we are, Peter. You know, we've got to deal with the reality of this. And Streeting has made a rod for his own back, in my view. I mean, he's been very bombastic with the doctors. He's been very kind of, you know, blunt and rude about them. And when you're negotiating, in my experience has been over the years, the last thing you do is you insult the people on the other side of the desk. You have to create a relationship. This is about negotiating. At the end of the day, we have to negotiate our way out of this, and shouting at each other isn't going to do it. We all know the strikes are dangerous. We all know that it's the last thing we want. We all know that Streeting has tried to sort it out, but he's created an environment where I don't think he can. So, you know, where do we go from here? My view would be that we urgently go to ACAS before Christmas to see if we can get them doing something. They're the independent arbiters of industrial disputes. Or even, you know, we go back to the Harold Wilson days, beer and sandwiches around number 10. I mean, I think Starmer could say, you know what, let's get them in and let's talk to them at number 10. First of all, it will make Starmer look a bit more interested than he actually is. You know, 10 out of 10, I'm gutted and all that. It doesn't do it for me. I want to see what he's going to do, roll up his sleeves, get him around the table and try and hammer out a deal. Because I'm telling you now, this is not the end of it. Their strike mandate runs out in January. And I'll have a little bet with you now that when they vote again to renew their strike mandate, they'll get another mandate taken into the
Well, I won't take that bet, Roy, because you're just so right about these things, and I think that is very, very likely to happen. And thank you for your analysis of that. We'll see how the country copes, certainly when that strike starts at 7 o'clock on Wednesday morning. The junior doctors striking on that matter. So much more to come, including on Bondi next here on Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
A very good evening. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's some breaking news, and that is that 5 Labour councillors have defected to the Green Party. This is Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party, celebrating the surge in his support. He says we'll talk about that. We'll certainly talk more about what happened at Bondi as well. Johnny Gould is standing by, one of my favourite commentators on these absolutely horrendous tragedies and the whole issue of anti-Semitism in our society as well. We'll talk this hour too about the fact that thousands of people have been marching in Crowborough for the 6th Sunday in a row to protest against 600 migrants moving into an army barracks. We'll talk to the chairwoman of Crowborough Shield for that. We'll also speak about the junior doctor strikes, to a former health minister, and speak to Rear Admiral Chris Parry about what is happening with Britain, Russia and Ukraine, because we're hearing there may well be some sort of breakthrough there. Friedrich Merz, anyway, the Chancellor of Germany, saying it's the biggest chance of peace since the war started. As always, I want as much to hear as many comments from you as possible, whether that is a phone call, whether it's a text message, however it is, voice notes as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a voice note, less than a minute please. We'll hear a couple of those in a second. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on the main number and ring me on the main number and send those voice notes on the main number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk. Well, that is the breaking news that 5 Labour councillors have defected to the Green Party. It's claimed to be the largest mass move to the party of its kind so far. I mean, I wouldn't really describe that 5 people moving as a mass move, but anyway, the leader, Zach Polanski, welcomed the 5 councillors, all representing in areas in the London borough of Brent, saying their claim mirrors what we're hearing across the country. The 5 Brent councillors to defect include a former cabinet member of Brent Council. We will bring you any reaction to that, of course, as we get it. I would imagine Labour will react to that at some stage. We want to talk about the main issue, of course, of the day, which is the fallout from that horrendous massacre when 2 terrorists visited Bondi Beach and killed many, many people, murdered many, many people. There is just a horrendous news and stories of the bravery, the resistance of those people to those gunmen, one of whom has been killed, the other is in a critical condition. Let's hear a couple of voice notes from you. Anna has been in touch on Bondi Beach.
I'm afraid I don't trust any Liberal Western government to keep me safe from these people. They cannot keep the Jews safe. They cannot keep women safe. Christian, Hindu, Sikh women, they cannot keep our children safe. I don't trust the police anymore. In fact, I don't trust any authority anymore. The only person I vaguely trust with this is Nigel Farage, and that is just about.
Samuel has also been in touch about what happened at Bondi Beach.
I know this is really like going in and delving in, and it would never happen, but how about if you deliberately go out to kill somebody, so like this massacre that's just happened in Australia, why not just bring back capital punishment and just literally just say, right, it's a life for a life. If you kill somebody, deliberately go out your way to kill somebody, you lose your life. Not you sit in a prison cell and you get food 3 times a day and you get killed.
Well, one of those gunmen has lost his life already. Another one may, because he's in critical condition. I will shed not too many tears if he does lose his life. I would imagine many others won't. They killed 15 people, including a child, and a further 42 people were taken to hospital in various conditions. 5 of them remain in critical condition this evening. The victims who have been identified include a 10-year-old girl called Matilda, a former police officer, rugby volunteer and photographer called Peter Mager, a father and husband, Tibor Weitzen, Secretary of the Sydney Beth Din, Rabbi Yaakov Levitan, a prominent Sydney rabbi called Rabbi Eli Schlanger, a Holocaust survivor called Alex Clateman, assistant at Bondi's Wellington Street Synagogue, Reuven Morrison, and a French Jewish man called Dan Elkayam. And just some of those stories are coming out, the really human stories of the horrendous tragedy that happened there. We will attempt to talk to Johnny Gould in just a second. I think we're having some connection problems. So in the meantime, I want to speak to Roy in Edinburgh, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Roy, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say about this horrendous tragedy?
I said it already, that for decades I have said that the people around the world with a clear conscience need to come together and just say no more of all these atrocities, whether it be wars or people against one another, whether it be Muslim, Jew, black or white. Just say to the leaders that are wanting the trouble, no more. If you wish to go and fight, off you go, and we shall watch you willingly. But please, leave the people alone.
Will they listen, though, Roy? Because there are so many people who will have come out in previous times. I've been to demonstrations myself in solidarity with Jewish people. There are so many horrendous tragedies that have been visited upon them and others. And if people have that ideology, if they have that murderous intent, it's up to the authorities to stop them, isn't it? It's not just kind words.
Yes, exactly. But we've seen so much clear pictures of the politicians, the councils, the mainstream media, the police. They've been having double standards at the protests, in my view.
Okay.
And I saw it firsthand with the COVID protests.
Yes. What did you see there, Roy? How did that inform your opinions?
I just did not believe in the lockdowns, and when I went to protests, the police were trying to make a fool of the protesters, and I just thought it was despicable.
Yeah.
They were just nasty.
Yeah. Roy, listen, thank you for your thoughts today. I really appreciate that. That's Roy in Edinburgh there. Oz in Bristol says, how many more Jews will die before our own gutless government stops this racist cancer? We continue to see anti-Jewish protest rallies in our capital, and our government does nothing. Why? Because they don't want to upset the Muslim community and lose their vote. It's despicable. When and where will we see the next such incident? Tim in Suffolk says, we remember Australia, the United Kingdom and Canada all have issues with anti-Semitism and violence. They're all Commonwealth countries. Your Majesty, sir, please help us, says Tim. Mark in Lincolnshire has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi there.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, obviously, what happened, I mean, I've got so many different things to say on this, what happened yesterday, really. I mean, the first thing is, this whole narrative thing, you know, obviously, this has affected the Jewish people on this occasion again. We all know the reasons for that. You know, there's so much anti-Semitism around anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But also as well, it's because we don't ever tackle the real big issues facing the West, really. It's not just a UK problem. This is something that's happening across the West. And that is, you know, and you and I have spoken about this before, and that is the problem of Islam. And Islam is a real problem. Because it doesn't matter how many times we sit here and say forevermore in a day, the average Muslim is a perfectly moderate person, they just want to get on with their life, blah, blah, blah. Well, we all know this. That's a no-brainer at the end of the day, because of course they do. However, there will always be a trigger for them. And this is the problem, because when they're following an ideology, I mean, I've never hated a Muslim in my life, but I hate the ideology they follow. Because the ideology they follow, you know, they are the worst of all creatures. That's how it describes Jews and Christians in the Quran. You know, that's one of 100 verses, you know, part of a verse.
Do you believe every single verse in the Bible, Mark?
No, I do not. However, well, the sort of verse in the Bible, I believe every single verse in the New Testament, yes. In the Old Testament, no, because the New Testament was designed, you know, was basically as a result of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. It was essentially an enlightenment, because there are some things in the Old Testament that are a little bit...
Well, you have a situation where you're talking about people who are followers of the Islamic faith who don't necessarily agree with everything that's in the Quran. I mean, we have someone like Ahmed Al-Ahmed, for example, seen running up to the attacker from behind, grabbing the shotgun for him before pointing the weapon back at him. He is a follower of Islam. He saved lives yesterday.
Yeah, he did the decent thing.
Yeah.
I would agree with you on that. However, we can have a whole different conversation about exactly how much of a hero he actually was, because if you actually look at the full video, what he actually achieved with what his actions
Mark,
were.
sorry, he took a gun off the gunman, risking his life in order to do so. There's not very much debate on this, I'm afraid.
He then let the gunman walk away, who went back up on the bridge, grabbed a spare weapon and started shooting at people again.
Okay, so you expect someone, you're saying we can question his heroism because he didn't shoot the gunman dead because he perhaps didn't know how to use a gun?
Well, I'm sorry, Peter. If I was going to take the risk of jumping in, to tackle a gunman, I'm going to make damn sure I'm going to keep him down.
What if he can't use a gun? What if he's never used a gun before? Mark, sorry, I just wholeheartedly disagree with you. He also may not have wanted to kill the gunman. Maybe that wasn't his belief.
Perhaps that is the case. In which case, he should have been, he's acted quite, I'm quite sure there's quite a few people out there that would say this, that know about these things more than I do or you do, that would say, it's quite a foolish thing in many ways.
I don't think it's foolish at all. I think he was a very brave man, Mark.
He had absolute bravery, Peter. I've already said that. What I've said is he didn't really achieve a great deal. That's all I've said.
Okay.
If I'm not allowed to say that, then there's something seriously wrong here, Peter.
You are allowed to say that, and you have said that, and that's absolutely fine. Mark, thank you for your call. I'm going to speak to Johnny Gould now, the presenter and broadcaster. Johnny, it's been absolutely horrendous what has happened in Sydney. The reaction that we're having, of course, around the world is revulsion, but of course there are many, many questions about whether this could have been avoided too.
Oh, Peter, these indiscriminate acts, I mean, you can put all the security up in the whole world and you can not always stop these tragedies. For some reason, I mean, and we've had a lot of tragedies, this has really hit home very, very badly. I can tell you that Britain's Jewish community will be going out publicly tonight and celebrating the second night of Hanukkah, lighting the Shamas candle, which is the workers' candle, the first one where you light the other two. It's the second night of Hanukkah, and we're going to do it with courage. I will not be cowed. I'm not going to worry about these things. What I will say is that community centres, schools and synagogues have already taken precautions. At a school that I know, they've shut half the road to make sure. It wasn't roadworks, it was security. The last time one of these outrages happened, and there have been a few, and I can't remember which one, they shut the whole road down. So there are provisions. I mean, this is, the King's Highway that we're shutting down, lest some nutcase in a fast car should ram the front of a school with kids aged between 4 and 11. So that's the Britain
and Johnny, when you hear Keir Starmer, the leader of our nation, saying we're going to do all we can to keep Jewish people safe, do you personally feel safe? Do the Jews you talk to every single day, your friends, your family, feel safe, feel reassured by what Keir Starmer says?
He declared for Palestine. I mean, that's all I've got to say about that, with no conditions whatsoever. And I've heard him talk publicly. Rather embarrassingly, he came to our synagogue 48 hours after Manchester, and he didn't really answer the questions that were posed of him. Some were kind of lame ones about, what can you do to help us? And he, sort of said, well, there's not really much I can do about the march. There's not really much I can do about the BBC and all this kind of stuff.
I mean, you're the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. You have an awesome power. You have a huge amount of power, more than anybody else in this country. There are lots of things he could do. They could do them right now. And we know from Keir Starmer that when he really wants to do something, when he wants to save British steel, he gets Parliament to come back on a Saturday. If there was the political will to deal with the scourge, the cancer of anti-Semitism in the society, he could do it today, Johnny, couldn't he?
Talking of Saturday, he could stop the marches going around London, which makes it extremely difficult for a Jewish person. I mean, it's just everywhere. I mean, it was even at my beloved Villa Park, where they didn't police it properly, even when the Jews weren't allowed to go. I went as a Villa fan, but there were Pakistani Bangladeshis identifying as Palestinians, the Muslim nation now right up to the grass verge underneath the Trinity Road stand. They could have stopped that. There were no Israeli fans there. Nothing's being done. And the worst thing about this, Peter, is, and it's not just Starmer, it's Albanese in Australia, it's Macron in France, and it's the other fella, Carney in Canada, the governor of the Bank of England of old days.
Yes.
You know, if they could, if they wanted to, they would do that. And it's their countries in which these atrocities are done. Israel's okay. It's coming together in security terms after the disaster of October the 7th. But these disasters are being committed in your countries. These are assaults on your nations.
And when you see so-called leaders, when you see Yvette Cooper putting out a tweet yesterday that doesn't mention the words anti-Semitism, it doesn't mention the words murder, it doesn't mention the words massacre, it doesn't talk about Hanukkah. You know, there Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach in Ireland, for example. There are so many leaders. Albanese's original statement, he's since changed his mind in all of that. But when we can see it, when the man on the street can see this as clear as the nose on our face, that this is straightforward anti-Jewish hatred, anti-Semitism, racism, for that is what it is. And some of our leaders are just slightly holding back, or very strongly holding back, on calling it what it is. If you're not even going to give it a name of what it is, how can you even begin to start to target it and deal with it?
Indeed, which is why, you know, you've got to commend the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, calling it, you know, Islamic terror, which is what it is. Call it by its name. And Jews are British people, they're Australian people, they're Canadian people, they're American people, and they have the same rights in theory as everyone else, and they were stripped of them yesterday. The only way, I think, to deal with these things is to have marksmen on roofs, but that's not going to happen, is it? This really needs to stop. It's been allowed. And as you say, Starmer called in his troops on a Saturday to sort out British Steel, and he can damn well do the same this time. We are at a crisis point around the world. This keeps happening. It happened at Yom Kippur, now it's happened at Hanukkah, and, you know, God forbid the next Jewish festival that it might happen as well, Pesach perhaps.
Johnny, thank you for your thoughts today. I wish you and your family a very happy Hanukkah, and thank you for speaking to us today. There's some breaking lines now here on Talk from the COVID inquiry. Lockdown measures led to tax rises. That is what Rishi Sunak has told the COVID inquiry. The former Prime Minister told the inquiry in his role as Chancellor during the pandemic he obviously didn't love having to increase taxes to save jobs and businesses. The 70 billion furlough scheme and the 840 million Eat Out to Help Out project, which propped up the hospitality sector, were two initiatives introduced to protect the economy. Overall, the total cost of fiscal interventions related to the pandemic estimated to be more than £350 billion. So he's taking some responsibility for the tax rises that happened there. I mean, it's hardly that groundbreaking, but at least he's admitted it. Thank you to Jason in the Lake District, who says Starmer toughens up on small boat migrants by threatening to cancel their Fortman Mason Christmas hampers. It transpires that being in government is proving a little trickier than Streeting and Labour appear to have thought. Sitting around a table doesn't appear to work after all. Jason also says Jack Elsom would be no good in a music quiz. The Labour MP had the whip removed and is welcome in both Jeremy Clarkson's pub and Rick Astley's. His RMP, Marcus Campbell Saviours, who's Keswick born and bred, and his father was a Labour MP as well. Well, thank you for all those messages. We'll hear more of your thoughts. We'll also go to Crowborough after the break, because we're going to talk about the to one of the organisers of the residents' protest, concerned about the plans about migrants and asylum seekers moving into that area. These have gone on for a number of weeks. Stay with us, and we'll speak to Kim Bailey in just a second.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Julian, who says, your call from Mark hits the nail on the head. Decades of left-leaning enablers and appeasers force-feeding us their own twisted brand of news and mainstream media has created the perfect conditions for this ideological virus to thrive. They're still doing it 24/7, despite the glaring, horrendous consequences. Dan in Kent says, evening Peter, evening Dan. Hardened socialist hatred for the Jews goes back to World War II. Nationalism is not just far right, it's far left too. And I remember National Socialism being the Nazis, but I can't remember any National Capitalism party. Far right is non-existent. It's a fantasy by the loony left. Sarah says, please tell me someone somewhere is investigating the claims of genocide and claims of atrocities that have come out of Gaza. So many have just accepted these claims blindly without asking themselves about validity. Well, Sarah, don't worry. There are definitely inquiries ongoing into all of that. And of course, we know so much of it is just propaganda. Cliff in Berkshire said, would it be worth setting up a national forum to unite and protect all religions? We should encourage moderate Muslims to speak out against the perversion of Islam so we can support them if they do so. Get all religious leaders to preach peace and tolerance. That is what the main religions are supposed to be about. Cliff, I totally agree with that. And I know a number of moderate Muslims who just will not speak out about this because they immediately become targets in their own community. The Islamists will target them and make their life very, very difficult indeed. Saying that, I would love to hear from any member of the Islamic community, any Muslim at all, who wants to give me a ring between now and 7 o'clock or send me a voice note. We can do it anonymously if you like. 0344 499 1000. What's your reaction to Bondi? Fred in West Sussex says, I take it all these illegals, when put into the military sites, will be detained, i.e. not allowed to roam freely. Slippery Starmers actually said these people would be detained whilst being dealt with, then deported. If these illegals were detained, it would ensure public safety and make the use of this option a bit more palatable to the general public. Fred from West Sussex there are two sides to this. One is the former military bases, for example, in Crowborough, where people would be kept, but they'd be allowed out into the community. They wouldn't be held there. It's only if they're deemed that they will be deported that their liberty is taken from them. The Prime Minister's been talking about this at liaison committee today, the sort of super committee of all the committees, all the select committee chairmen and women in Parliament. Let's just hear a little bit about what the Prime Minister has been saying.
We have got military sites under consideration. Obviously, we need to make sure that they're suitable and that all the necessary checks have been carried out. But we do want, asylum hotels were at their height measured, I think it was 400 or so. They're down to about 200 now. I'm absolutely determined that we will close them by the end of this Parliament, sooner if it's possible, and that's why military sites are under consideration.
Well, the Prime Minister has been quizzed on all sorts of aspects, but one person will be interested in what the Prime Minister has had to say. There's Kim Bailey. She is chairwoman of Crowborough Shield and the organisation of residents concerned at the plan. She's a Crowborough protester. Kim, thank you for joining me today. I know that quite a number of people, thousands of people in fact, have been demonstrating peacefully in Crowborough because of the plan there. Just tell us what that plan is and what your thoughts on it are.
So obviously the plan is that they're going to be moving between 500 and 600 asylum seekers into Crowborough army training camp. So this isn't just a disused military site. This was home to thousands of cadets prior to them being evicted last week. So obviously the plan is that they're going to move them in at speed. I did go and meet with the MOD and the Minister for Immigration, Alex Norris. And I did put these questions about using the site and why Crowborough was chosen. Now, listening to what the Prime Minister was just saying there about moving them from hotels into army barracks and whether they're suitable, this is a really reckless decision. And it's only those people, Keir Starmer, the Home Secretary, and Alex Norris, that think this is a good idea. And it's absolutely not for a plethora of reasons. So
what do you think should happen? Where do you think they should go, except obviously not in your area?
It's not about not in our area, that NIMBYism.
Well, that's part of it, surely. You wouldn't be protesting if this was happening somewhere else, would you?
No, obviously we are concerned about Crowborough and the impact on Crowborough. The decision to place 500 to 600 undocumented men in this small town of around 20,000, as I say, they're undocumented. They are free to roam, they're free to come and go. After 7 days of disappearing, they get a welfare check and then they're not checked again after that. The fact that this is not a disused army barracks that the government are talking about, this is home to thousands of cadets. This is the only thing for young people to do in our area, and that has been stripped away from them. So this isn't just about this town doesn't want them. The impact on this community is huge. There's been no impact assessments. There's been no engagement from the Home Office, from our leadership at Wealdon District Council. The way that this has been ram-raided through, when I spoke to the MOD and the Minister for the MOD, they said to me that it was about speed. So safety is being compromised because they want to do this quickly, because Keir Starmer is saying he wants to close hotels, but at what cost? What's the consequences? That's what's not being considered. The site is unsuitable. I mean, you can see from the pictures, they put up fences because fencing, there is no suitable fencing. It's a very thin fence. So they decided to put this new temporary Harris fencing up. And it all got blown down within 24 hours. I mean, we're the highest point of Sussex, north of the Downs. It was never going to hold. Trucks get stuck. That truck was stuck there for days. And, the whole site is unsuitable for like I say,
what do you say to what the Home Office is saying? A spokesperson for the Home Office, maybe it's a man, maybe it's a woman, maybe they don't know, someone who works for the Home Office anyway, says, "We are furious at the level of illegal migrants in asylum hotels. This government will close every asylum hotel. Work is well underway, with more suitable sites being brought forward to ease pressure on communities and cut asylum costs. We're working closely with local authorities, property partners and across government so that we can accelerate delivery." It comes to your point. First of all, it doesn't address the key points that you have brought up about Crowborough, and it also talks about that speed point, and that is clearly what they want to do. They want to get this out of their in tray, don't they?
Yeah, but at what expense? They're just moving the chess pieces. They're not, they had two ambitions, which was to reduce the impact on communities and to reduce the cost. Now, the cost of this is much greater than the hotels, because it's like for like cost-wise in terms of per bed, per night. But you've got millions and millions of taxpayers' money being spent up front to ready the site to make it habitable. This is a training facility. This is not a site that is suitable for living on. And as I've said previously, this is a site where you've got literally 360 shooting ranges around that site. So you are creating a simulated war zone for people coming from a war zone who may well have mental health problems, PTSD. Where are they going to go? They're going to try and escape that environment, and they're going to come into the town. There's nothing to do in the town. It's a disaster for the town. And on top of that, there's been no engagement, no impact assessments, no risk assessments. We get nothing from Wealdon District Council, from the leadership. We get nothing from the Home Office. We get the same rhetoric that you've just said. There is absolutely nothing to reassure the town. People are worried. We see the atrocities on the news all the time. It's daily. And there is nothing to reassure anyone in that community.
So what do you do now, Kim? You've been doing this now for 6 Sundays. Is there do you feel you clearly don't feel you're being listened to at all? What's the next stage of your strategy?
So we have issued proceedings against the Home Secretary. So that did go in on Wednesday. We will continue to protest every week until the decision is reversed. Even through the Christmas period, people will still come out. The strength of feeling in this town is unrecognized. It's massive. the temperature is changing. It's going from a kind of unified approach. You can now feel the anger because building is not listening. The Home Office is not listening. And it does worry me what is going to happen if and when the asylum seekers do go in, because no one's being listened to.
Kim, thank you. We wish you well. We're certainly listening to you. And thank you for coming on the programme. That's Kim Bailey. There's the chairwoman of Crowborough Shield. Elizabeth is in Chorley and has given me a shout on 0344 499 1000. Elizabeth, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I'd like to say that our government and the Australian government and quite a few other Western governments haven't been listening to anything. They haven't taken notice of anything. And to be quite honest, they serve their own agenda.
Okay.
They want to be.
So you would
re-elected.
presumably agree with what Kim was saying there from her local community, the problems that are there, the problems that'll be if 500 or 600 undocumented men come in there.
Yeah.
You agree with what she's saying?
It needs to stop. But I'm not saying that all immigration needs to stop. I'm saying that they need to document people.
Yeah.
I mean, God forbid, if a family came from Syria, a mum, dad and kids, and they couldn't get shelter in our country, I'd feel ashamed. Because, you know, there are people under the cosh out there in the world. But these
we are a very compassionate. We are a very
not under the cosh.
Well, we're a very compassionate country. We've taken loads of asylum seekers, Elizabeth, and the problem is those who are swinging the lead, who see us as a soft touch and are coming here and abusing the system. That's the problem. It's the fairness, isn't it?
Our government is not strong enough to address these problems. There's a massive Muslim community out there in our country now, and they're all mostly in the north. I know there's quite a few in London and whatever, but the fact is they are looking after our MPs, and the government are looking after their wages because they dare not upset them. But I would say that many decent Muslim people and families are absolutely reviled for this.
Yeah.
And it's not fair.
Listen, I totally agree with you on that final point, Elizabeth. Thank you. That's Elizabeth in Chorley there. I want to speak to Jana. Is that how you pronounce Jana or Jana? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Jana.
Jana, sorry about that. In Shropshire. You're very welcome to the programme, Jana. What would you like to say?
Thank you. Well, while I was making my mince pies, I had a big urge to call you. I've just lit my Hanukkah candles. And
is that because you're going to send me the mince pies, Jana?
No, they're going to light my way to making the mince pies. No, I'm Jewish and I lived in Israel when I was a child and came here. And I had this overwhelming urge to wish everyone a happy Hanukkah. My Muslim friends, my Jewish friends, my Christian friends, all faiths. And to just let you know that it's Chag Sameach, it's a happy holiday, and that we will prevail, that good people, strong people, people with faith and people with good intentions will prevail, and that we have to be strong and we have to be together and help each other. That's basically what I want to say, because it's so sad, and I thought this is a celebration, this is a holiday. So Chag Sameach. Happy Hanukkah.
Well, thank you, John, and a very happy Hanukkah to you as well. And that positivity and that grit and determination that so many of my Jewish friends have in the light of so many horrendous tragedies, such as the one yesterday, it makes me admire the Jewish community and my friends and neighbours, and you as well, Jana, and not just because of your mince pies, very, very much indeed. So thank you for that call. I really appreciate it there. That's Jana there in Shropshire. We'll take a break now. We'll talk more about the junior doctor strike. We'll talk more about Russia, Ukraine and America and the negotiations that are going on there as well. Lots to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk Drive.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Dave in Lichfield, who says, to the person criticising the hero for not attempting to shoot the other gunman, watch the video again. His whole behaviour was a man conscious about getting shot by the police in error, and consider his ethnicity. It was a wise thing to consider. Firing a rifle of that calibre with no knowledge could have killed an innocent as well, says Dave. Starmer is Prime Minister, says Margaret. He should now stop any more protests. He has the authority to do this. He should not call a Cobra meeting. He has to protect the Jewish community, and 737 people crossing the channel needs to be addressed, says Margaret. Greg says the whole story is elevated to exactly the same reasons that Schindler's List is the biggest Holocaust film. His redemption and stops the public examining the real ugliness. That heroic man is an individual, and he represents nothing more than his own humanity, just like Schindler, not the murderous collective tribal ideology behind the murders. Paul says, so the guy who took the gun off the killer was supposed to kill him. How did that work? That caller was wrong. Phil in Portsmouth says, we know Keir Starmer's talk is cheap. The same when David Lammy went to Manchester to reassure the people that Labour were on their side. The best thing I think they could have done, rather than shout at him, was just turn their backs on him and ignore him, says Phil in Portsmouth. The junior doctor strike is what Deb wants to talk about. She has texted me 87222. The junior doctor strike is just about greed and holding the weak government to ransom because they know we will cave in. Sorry, they will cave in. It's supposed to be about recovering lost wages back to 2008, but most of those in the picket lines were not even old enough to be a doctor in 2008, who have not actually lost anything. Every other public sector workers' union will soon be joining the bandwagon, and more strikes will follow. Same old story. Labour will be leaving office with huge debts for the incoming government to deal with, says Deb. I think you're right on all those points. Let's hear what Janice in Essex thinks about the doctor's strike. Janice, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Oh, hi, Peter. Thank you for taking my call. What I don't think the doctors are doing themselves any favours are saying it's about £18. What it's about is that they've spent 5 or 8 years training.
Yep.
And there's not enough jobs for them. But we are still bringing in doctors from abroad.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we not filling their places? I mean...
Well, you're absolutely right. And that's the... Well,
and you've got
You're right, Janice. That's the fundamental issue here. I mean, pay is one thing, and I think they need to sit down and shut up about pay. But when it comes to, Janice, as you correctly point out, when it comes to them saying there's a bottleneck here for these specialist jobs after a few years as junior doctors, I have some sympathy with them.
How long's a junior doctor? 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
Under a consultant, a houseman, a registrar.
Yeah.
A consultant goes on till about their 80.
Well,
so
it depends on the consultant, Janice, but certainly, yeah.
For these poor men or women, they're not getting the jobs.
And we're importing people
in from abroad.
Yeah, listen,
I'm with them on this. I'm not with them on striking, but I do stand for them because they're not the jobs. They're training, and there's not the jobs. This is the government's fault.
Yeah. Listen, I think I totally agree with you on your point there, Janice. I think my position is exactly the same as yours, so I thank you for your message there. Jill in Cornwall has some thoughts on the strikes as well. She's given me a ring on 03444991000. Jill, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
Well, I'm not in support of the strikes. If I'm honest with you, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work in the hospital up in North Devon, so it isn't as if I don't know anything about the doctors and what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But it really concerns me that these strikes, they have them so often. They have them. They come out on strike. They demand more money. They get a pay offer. They take it, and then a few months later, we're back in the same situation as we were 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so it goes on. And my concern is that people are dying as a result. There must be people that are suffering as a result of these doctors not working.
You're absolutely right, Jill, and it is absolutely the case that when junior doctors go on strike, people die. That is a fact.
Well, how can that be acceptable? You know, to see them standing on the pavement, grinning their heads off with their boards and everything else, when their jobs are to do with life and death, and people that are dying are not the very people that would be the ones that they would need to target if it's money they're after. You know, I'm sorry, but it's like there's something obscene about people being used to die in order to prove a point to a government that somebody needs a job or they need more money in their job. I'm sorry, I just cannot get my head around the fact that they're prepared to do this and it not matter to them.
Jill,
all they're concerned about is more money.
I think you make some very, very good points there, Jill. Thank you for your call, Jill in Cornwall there. Becca in Norfolk says the doctors have just proven nothing to do with working conditions or the fight to gain placements. It's just about money. They no longer have my support, says Becca in Norfolk. Cliff in Berkshire says, I wonder whether the guy who disarmed the terrorist's own life is not at risk from Islamists. I would imagine he would be, very, very sadly. Les in Wiltshire says, so are they going to move all those who are in HMOs as well to these camps, because they should do, to keep an eye on them, says Les in Wiltshire. Steve Bryan is the former health minister. He is the former Conservative Public Health and Primary Care Minister and joins me now. Steve, these strikes are now going to happen. What's your reaction?
Hi, Pete. It's a Christmas disaster, and it is unreasonable. I heard the Prime Minister this afternoon on the liaison committee, which brings back many memories. I don't remember the Prime Minister saying it was unreasonable when they were striking for a Conservative government, but they are utterly unreasonable. 28.9% pay rise last year. And the Health Secretary, who can be doing the right thing and playing politics all at the same time, with his offer last week, put the ball firmly back in the BMA's court. Now, I'm not at all surprised, Pete, they've come to this conclusion. And it's not a tiny vote. 30,000 doctors voted here on a 60% turnout for this strike action. But I'm not surprised they come to this conclusion. But for them, actually, I'm disappointed, because I think, they're not really boxing clever here. The smart thing to do would have been to bank the offer that was made on jobs, on vacancies, and then do the right thing by the NHS, do the right thing by the public and public opinion, and then come back next year when there won't be a flu wave hitting the hospitals and open a new dialogue with the hospitals over pay. That would have been the smart thing to do.
Do you think they have a point on when it comes to the bottleneck in regard to jobs, and what should the government do about that? Because there are quite a number of foreign doctors who are brought in for those specialist jobs.
So they definitely have a point on that. They definitely have a point on the fact that the country is under-doctored. The Health Secretary did make a move on jobs, and instead of it being something like, 10 applicants for one position, it's now 2 applicants for one position in the offer that he made last week. He said that was final. I won't be coming back for more. I noticed on the media around this evening, he's now saying, that we can talk about improving that offer. The thing is, Pete, yes, you can look at the disaster that this is right now, but what I'm looking at, and I think ministers need to look at, is where do they go next? The trouble is for ministers in this government is that they are hoisted by their own petard. Wes Streeting said, and I sat through many an urgent question in the Commons, that this was just a case of getting in the room, talking to these people, and you can resolve this by talking. You can't, because they're unreasonable. But the fact is that Wes Streeting needs the doctors more than the doctors need Wes Streeting. And I just worry that the rhetoric is going up and up and up, and the heat is getting hotter and hotter in this. But sooner or later, they're going to have to come to an accommodation here, because, Wes Streeting's got the public on his side over this particular strike with this particular set of doctors. But when it comes to a general election in 3.5 years' time, the public will judge this Labour government on the NHS and whether they've achieved their aims in reducing waiting lists, which they've made some progress on, as we've discussed before, on access to primary care, on access to child and adolescent mental health services. They're the things that people will judge it on. And politicians will come back and say, but we were disrupted by this, by that, by this. But ultimately, the public will judge the politicians on how they deliver on their promises, and excuses won't wear.
Steve, thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's Steve Bryan there, the former Conservative Public Health and Primary Care Minister. What do you think about this? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about Russia, Ukraine, America and the UK next. There could well be some sort of breakthrough in those talks. We'll speak to Rear Admiral Chris Parry, the former NATO and Royal Navy Commander, who will be speaking to us in just a second here on Talk.
Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it appears there may have been some progress on Ukraine. It says real progress made at talks with the US in Berlin. Zelensky saying work is respectful to Ukraine and around the clock. Trump is pleased, apparently. Zelensky's going to meet European leaders to give an update. Friedrich Merz, who's the Chancellor of Germany, says there's a real chance of peace. It deepens its commitment to Ukraine's defence, says Germany. Let's get expert analysis from Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, ex-NATO and Royal Navy Commander. Is there cause for optimism this tea time, Chris?
No, I mean, no news is good news. I'm afraid to say the cards are still being held by all the players around the table at the moment. You're not actually seeing what anybody's got, and nobody's really bidding at any stage here. It's ongoing. I suspect that everybody's playing the long game right now. Nobody's winning, nobody's losing, and as long as that continues through the winter, you're not going to see any hard proposals being accepted or rejected.
What needs to happen, and do you think it's likely that Ukraine will cede any territory? We've heard from Zelensky certainly that he's constitutionally not allowed to do that, but can you see a solution to this that doesn't involve the ceding of some territory?
Well, of course, Peter, they've lost nearly a fifth of their country already. I mean, Russia is occupying that. I don't think there's much chance of them getting that back unless, obviously, somebody else comes to Ukraine's aid. Looking at it militarily, it would be suicidal for them to give up the fortress belt, as it's called, in the western Donbass region. It would open up the whole of Ukraine to a subsequent invasion. There's an awful lot of raw materials there, and there's quite a lot of population there as well. And I think that's where it's going to be really sticking. If you can freeze the conflict along the current borders, I suspect that's something that people can live with. Ukraine will never, ever give up on those territories that it's had to surrender if it does agree. But the fact of life is you will get a peace, rather like in North Korea and South Korea back at the end of the Korean War. And you'll have this frozen conflict where there'll be security guarantees in place and substantial aid to Ukraine to make sure that it's not invaded again. I'm one of those people that doesn't want foreign troops to go into Ukraine. The best peacekeepers for Ukraine are Ukrainians. We should arm them to the teeth. It's as simple as that.
And certainly when you look at the deficiencies in our own military and whether we would be able to actually give peacekeepers, because if there was an attack on the UK, God forbid, whether we could get a sustainable force of 5,000 or 10,000 soldiers would be in question. I wonder, just speaking about the UK and the coalition of the willing, how important are they in this? Does it matter that Germany, for example, says it's deepening its commitment to Ukraine's defence, or is this simply all about America, Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah, it's all about America, Ukraine and Russia. But where it is relevant, Peter, is that the United States wants Europe to take responsibility for Ukraine's security and also for maintaining deterrence and also peace in our continent. It's quite explicit in the national security architecture that the United States is concentrating now on China as what it calls its pacing threat, and will only really look at Europe or anywhere else in the world if it's got the capacity to do so outside what it's doing with China and things like that. I mean, one of the things that we saw in the national security strategy is what I would call a Monroe doctrine for the 21st century. They are simply saying The Western Hemisphere is ours, and you interfere in that, at your peril. So we're going back to great power conflict again.
And certainly when that would be echoed by the new female chief of MI6, Blaise Maitrelli, who talks about Russia bullying, fear-mongering and manipulating the UK. You would agree with that, presumably?
Yeah, it's been going on for some time. I'm amazed our politicians have actually only just noticed. I mean, the fact of life is we were distracted severely by operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. I can tell you all the noises that are being made now, Peter, by the security services and by the head of our armed forces were being made 20 years ago. When they were warned that Russia was coming back again. We talked about a comprehensive approach, uniting the country and every agency and the population against the threat. And we actually said at the time, we're going to have to get back to a Cold War mentality.
Chris, aside from your work on analysing defence, and we very much appreciate the fact that you've done that this evening, you're also the mayoral candidate for Reform UK at Hampshire and the Solent. There was a question today to Danny Kruger at a press conference for Reform UK about comments that you apparently wrote online about David Lammy saying he must go home to the Caribbean where his loyalties lie. Some have called that racist. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that somebody in a major newspaper has a bit of an obsession about this, and you really shouldn't believe everything you read in the newspapers.
Did you write it? Did you write that?
I'm not going to talk about it. People should go to Twitter and see what was written in the context in which it happened. But all I'm saying is, if you're the foreign secretary of this country, your primary loyalty must be to this country.
Do you believe his primary loyalty is to this country? Because he was born in this country. His parents weren't, of course.
Ask him.
Okay. Chris, thank you very much indeed. That's Chris, Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry there, former NATO and Royal Navy commander, talking about the progress that appears to have happened there. I asked him about that issue with Reform UK as well. Lots to discuss in the next hour, of course, and lots of people getting in touch. Phil says, great show as usual. With regards to these military sites being full of asylum seekers, then shouldn't we be filling them full of our military, given the fact that this whole country seems to be under attack from every direction? Threats from Russia, you've got terrorist events going on, and yet again the priority is just about housing asylum seekers instead of taking care of our own security. Sorry for the rant, but it's getting too much. Phil, I totally can see where you're coming from, and I wouldn't apologise in the slightest. Emily in Wiltshire says, although it's true that if Ahmed al-Ahmed did not stop the evil terrorists from killing more people, he did stop use of one of their weapons. I'm guessing he didn't know how to use a gun, as he could have shot him in the leg, so not killing him. It is still an extremely brave act, says Emily in Wiltshire. Emily, I agree with you. And one more from Mick in Wallington, who says police chiefs like Rowley and Guildford, that's the Metropolitan Police Chief and I think the West Midlands Police Chief, set by two-tier standards for policing the hate marches by enabling and empowering Antifa and their far-left cronies. We're witnessing the results now. They must be held to account. Enough of our thoughts and prayers are with the victims, says Mick in Wallington. We'll get more of your thoughts on what has happened at Bondi Beach, the dreadful, dreadful tragedy there. Jonathan Harunoff is Israel's international spokesman at the United Nations. He has spent quite a lot of time in Bondi and in Australia and will join us next. We'll also find out why Santa would apparently vote Green and why Reform UK would get a vote from Scrooge. Stay with us.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Talk Drive, and it's just past 6 o'clock, and there are going to be a number of events right around the UK to remember what has happened in Bondi, that horrendous anti-Semitic massacre of innocent people simply celebrating the religious festival of Hanukkah. It's happening at the moment, Hanukkah, and we wish all our Jewish viewers and listeners a very happy Hanukkah, although it is a dreadful one for the people of Sydney. We'll be talking in just a second to someone who spent a lot of time there and is now a spokesman for the Israeli government. We'll talk to him. We'll see what the Prime Minister has been saying about all of this today, and we'll get your reaction too. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about what's in the Sun tomorrow, and find out from YouGov. The polling company has done a big survey about how Santa would vote. He would apparently vote for the Green Party, and Scrooge would go for reform, but some have questioned that, of course, because there is, Scrooge certainly not using electricity very much. Maybe he's more on the green side of things. It's a very stupid story, but we'll have a bit of a chat about it a little bit later on. And Father Christmas, of course, not thinking about polling at the moment, except, of course, for the North Pole. He will be coming down the chimneys of our wonderful sons and daughters and nieces and nephews very, very soon, in just over a week's time, and I'm certainly looking forward to celebrating that with my family. Lots to discuss. Today on Talk between now and 7, Kevin O'Sullivan up between 7 and 10, I should say. You can give me a ring. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message. You can send me pick up the phone and give me a ring as well, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Should say I'll be back with Drive tomorrow between 4 and 7, and then with breakfast on Thursday, and then the mid-morning show 10 till 1 Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I'm off for Christmas. I want to turn our attention now to what has happened at Bondi Beach. An absolutely horrendous story. We did 3 hours on it yesterday on my Sunday programme, as although the details came out, the police chief speaking about it, the political leaders and all the rest of it. But what I want to do is bring it right back down to what the people experienced there, and this was absolutely heartrending testimony from an eyewitness. Listen to this.
Can you tell me what happened?
Yes, there was 2 shooters, one on the bridge, one under the bridge. Just started to shoot for 20 minutes. They shoot, change magazine and just shoot. Simple as that. 20 minutes with 4 policemen there. Nobody give fire back. Nothing. Like they froze. Like for it looked like 20 minutes. And they shoot. The guy changed magazine. I look at him all the time. I was 2 of my babies under me, and I look at that, and it's just rifle and a pistol, and just shoot. And the other one was under. They start to come close to the audience. I think one of the people took his rifle and shoot him. That's one of them. That's what I saw. I didn't know how much I saw, but
who were they targeting?
Oh, all the crowd, anyone, Jewish, just shoot. Doesn't matter who. Men, all kids, everyone.
It's just absolutely dreadful to hear the first-hand eyewitness testament of what happened there. And so far, 16 people have died. One of them is a gunman. We'll shed no tears for him. But the 15 people who were murdered include a child. There are further 42 people were taken to hospital. 5 people apparently still in critical condition this evening. The victims who've been identified include a 10-year-old girl called Matilda, a former police officer, rugby volunteer and photographer called Peter Mager, father and husband Tibor Weitzen, Secretary of the Sydney Beth Din Rabbi Yaakov Levitan, a prominent Sydney Rabbi Eli Schlanger, who I think is originally British, a Holocaust survivor, a man called Alex Clateman, an assistant at Bondi's Wellington Street Synagogue, Reuven Morrison, and a French Jewish man called Dan Elkayam. And of course, all those stories now coming out of those people. They were there simply to celebrate Hanukkah. a Jewish festival of light, of hope, but of course the great darkness came yesterday. The Prime Minister has been responding to this. This is what he's been saying this afternoon.
This is clearly not an isolated incident, and these incidents are chillingly focused on some of the holiest days in the Jewish calendar. And of course we have in our minds Heaton Park here in the United Kingdom in October. And I want to reassure our Jewish communities here in the United Kingdom that we will take every step that we can, use all of our powers to make sure they're safe and secure as they should be in the United Kingdom. We'll continue our discussions after the session today.
Jonathan Harunoff is Israel's international spokesman at the United Nations. He is a great man and author of a brilliant book called Unveiled Inside Iran's Woman, Life, Freedom, Revolt. He's not really speaking for the Israeli government particularly in this interview, but maybe we'll get to a bit of that. But I've been reading an article that he has written about many things, about Bondi, and he mentions Rabbi Eli Schlanger, whose event was designed to fill Bondi with joy and light. He was murdered along with many others. That should stop us cold. Jews were shot for celebrating Hanukkah. There's so much complexity to this, Jonathan, who is joining us from New York now. There's so much complexity to this, but it is in itself, at its heart, so simple. It was simply hatred of Jewish people celebrating a festival of light.
Good evening, Peter. Great to be with you, and thank you for having me. Yes, there's a lot of complexity, but ultimately it boils down to a vicious, vile, violent, millennia-old hatred of Jews. And among the most sickening things is exactly where this took place. This took place Bondi Beach, calm, peaceful place. And if you look at the poster of the Chabad organization that organized this event, they're advertising the event as near a children's playground. And the idea was to build community, which is what Chabad movements do all around the world, from Alaska to Hawaii to Sydney to Beijing, London, all over the world. And the sole purpose of this sickening father-son murderous terrorist duo was to kill as many Jewish people as they can. And oftentimes we see in these horrific scenarios the best of humanity, including the brave man who stopped one of the shooters, but also the absolute very worst of humanity. And unfortunately, Peter, the last time you and I spoke on your channel was when we were talking about another incident on another Jewish festival at Heaton Park Synagogue. So we're seeing a very sickening trend emerge where Jewish festivals worldwide are becoming sort of hunting grounds for Jews, and it's really appalling.
And you've mentioned that in your article as well, about how the absolute shamefulness of the authorities' reaction to something I don't think we actually have discussed previously, but we've discussed on this programme many times about Maccabi Tel Aviv, Israeli fans going to a football match in Aston in Birmingham. They were essentially told, we can't protect you by the police, and they were banned. And that just chimes with something you have written in your article as well. Jews across the world are now asking themselves questions no one should have to ask in a free society. Is it safe to attend a public Jewish event to be visibly Jewish this Hanukkah? And it is that point about being visibly Jewish. We know someone in one of the a campaigner near one of the hate marches in London said, well, we can't bring you through because you're visibly Jewish. And the fact is that this attack didn't come out of nowhere. It is a centuries-old hatred, as you know, but there's so many who have some role in all of this. People who turned their heads and didn't attack people when they started slagging off Jewish people for being Jewish, when people said globalise the Intifada and were not arrested. There are many, many aspects to this, Jonathan.
I think you're totally right, Peter, that there was a tremendous and disheartening amount of minimization and just ignoring the warnings. There are warnings all over the world. In the UK, there were warnings. In the US, there were warnings. In Australia, there were warnings of people who are out in the streets, allegedly taking part in peaceful protests, exercising their free speech, but they're not really just saying words. They're saying words and inciting violence that actually turns into violence. And it's very disturbing to see that many people haven't been able to connect those dots. That when you incite hatred for 2 years, when you continue to demonize the Jews, demonize Israel, that inevitably you're going to see attacks take place, like what we saw on October 7th with Simchat Torah, Eaton Park on Yom Kippur, and now, unfortunately, Bondi Beach on Hanukkah. But if we're going to look at the positive here, I know I wrote yesterday that many Jewish people are questioning whether or not they can go out freely and visibly Jewish. A very positive thing that I saw was I attended last night the first candle lighting for the first night of Hanukkah, and it was actually an event organized by Chabad, who continue the show running, of course, and the turnout was astronomical. It was probably 3 times what it would have been had the horrific events not occurred earlier that day. And I think that really goes to show that the sort of defiance and resilience of the Jewish people, that we will continue to use light to extinguish all of the darkness out there. And there's a heck of a lot of darkness out there.
You're speaking to us from New York, but you've spent a lot of time in Bondi. You did a book event there as well. Tell us about the Australian Jewish community. Tell us how resilient they're going to be after this horrendous tragedy.
Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to spend a Shabbat with the Jewish community in Bondi Beach, and they essentially relayed things that are sort of expected, that they have legitimate concerns about their safety, that they've issued warnings time and time again to people in positions of authority, and in most cases those warnings are going ignored. But at the same time, there was an incredible amount of bravery, resilience, courage, people in the community speaking out, and their welcome to me and to many other people who come visiting was really tremendous. And my main takeaway from that visit was just how resilient and brave they were back then, and especially in the 24 hours or so since the attacks.
Jonathan, thank you as always. Jonathan Harunoff, Israel's international spokesman at the United Nations. He's also author of a great book called Unveiled Inside Iran's Woman, Life, Freedom, Revolt. We'll talk more about this as the show progresses, right up until 7 o'clock. If you want to get your voice on the air, the number is 0344 499 1000. Thanks to Angie, who says the hero who struggled with a gunman deserves a medal. He probably didn't shoot the suspect, as he could have been mistaken for one of the gunmen. He's a hero, and anyone that says otherwise is wrong in Angie's opinion. Dan in Kent says, fantastic sentiment towards the Jewish community again, Peter. Great guess. How you manage all this and huge public opinion on top is an absolute credit to your team. It's extremely depressing, the divisions in the democratic world, but common sense will prevail. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that, and I know the team behind the scenes appreciate your kind words as well. Neil says the people of Caerphilly had a chance to make a stance against the ultra-left Welsh Labour Party, but instead of voting reform, they voted for the ultra-left Plaid Cymru, so no change there. To coin Private Fraser, we're all doomed, I say, says Neil. Well, interestingly, I was speaking to an expert in Welsh politics, had a cup of tea with him on Friday. He was saying that he thinks Reform UK are going to win the Welsh Assembly election. It'll be very, very interesting to see what happens there. On the junior doctor strikes, Matt in Grimsby said, didn't the junior doctors know what the pay was to be a junior doctor when they signed up for the course? If you want more money, get another job. Matt, totally agree with that. Steve in Scotland says, when I think of the main 3 political parties, I'm reminded that Reform don't know what they are doing. But for me, Reform are willing to, but unable, but this can be easily fixed with experience, whereas Tories are unwilling but capable, and Labour are unwilling and incapable of doing what the people need, says Steve in Scotland. Stephen actually, I'll read that out a bit later on, actually. Martin says, again, more dancing around the edges when it comes to Muslims in the West. It is totally disingenuous to say the majority of Muslims are peace-loving. The reality is that whilst only a tiny minority may commit acts of terror, a sizable proportion of Muslims openly support the same. Then we have the majority who are silently supporting acts of terror. It is that silence which is deafening. Gary in Edinburgh says, we want Islam out of our country and it will be banned. People have had enough. You need to stop being so mealy-mouthed about it. I don't know anyone who thinks differently, and I mean no one, says Gary in Edinburgh. Amanda says, out of respect to all Jews, the regular hate marches must end. They have made their point. And a final one before the break from Robbie. He says, how much do you want to bet that on PMQs on Wednesday, Starmer starts with his usual and well-rehearsed "we stand with the Jewish community" speech, the 3rd time he's come out with it, when I believe his indifference to the Jewish people is as bad as Corbyn's, Abbott's, Andy McDonald and many other Labour backbenchers. Labour hasn't rid itself of Jew haters. Starmer bottled it, sending Lammy to the Manchester Synagogue. Lots more to discuss. We'll get your voice on the air as well. Take plenty of callers, as many as I can, between now and 7 o'clock. So stay with us here on Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including some people on Twitter as well. Nicholas says, I'm just a working class bloke. Don't say you're just something, Nicholas. I'm sure you're many things. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being working class. You should be very proud of it. Please can you tell me what is racist about Chris Parry pointing out that Calamity Lammy's loyalties are not to the UK? Hasn't he tried to get trillions of pounds paid to the Caribbean to stop this absolute stupidity? Well, Nicholas, thank you. It wasn't so much that he said his loyalties, he said he should go back to the Caribbean, except, that's the thing that sometimes racist people say, that people should go home. That is not the case with David Lammy, who was born in this country, so that's what I was attempting, anyway, to ask Chris Parry about, and maybe we'll talk about it more in future. Thank you to Rafi. He says that my voice drips with weakness. Nothing will ever change while he cling to this broken mindset. Islamists cannot coexist in the West. The contradiction is absolute. I totally agree with you with Islamists. I would happily, if anyone is an Islamist, I do not want them anywhere near the United Kingdom or I don't want them anywhere actually, but I certainly don't want them anywhere in the West. So I'm absolutely 100% against Islamism. Absolutely. I'm not against Islam itself or people who are followers of that, which is perhaps what you're talking about there. Another person says, I don't agree with any politician switching sides without the mugs, us public people having a say. We vote for a party. We understand that represents our views. Changing sides undermines democracy. And Jason Jordan says, why on earth did they have that news about the defecting Green councillors have to wait until 5 p.m? I have no idea, Jason. Simply, we get embargoes. We respect embargoes. If we get a press release in that says something's embargoed to 5 o'clock, we wait until 5 o'clock till we tell you, because if you don't respect the embargoes, well, it's not going to work. Journalism isn't going to work. So I agree with you. I don't think it was the world's biggest story, it must be said, but we did bring it to you anyway. Let's talk to Kevin in the East Midlands about the Bondi attack. Kevin, you've seen certainly the response of so many people, including Keir Starmer. What do you think?
Apart from the fact that I'm on one of my long commutes, and thanks for having me on again. It's great to listen to your show on one of my another long commute. But does he realise we can actually hear him when he lies? Because he doesn't seem to do anything, it's all just words. And we all know it'd be followed by absolute zero action.
What do you think he's lying about here, Kevin?
He'll do the best he can to protect the Jewish community. He won't. He hasn't done anything really so far, and I don't. What is he going to do? Is he going to go and tell the police to actually deal with the people that are on the street this weekend?
I think there's a heck of a lot more he can do. I think there's a lot more that he chooses not to do.
Yes, that's my point. And then he comes on with some drivel, that he cares. He's just pandering for his own votes, and to say what you just said about the person who just messaged in, that loses democracy. He doesn't want to lose his seat, so he's pandering to people that are going around just committing terrorist acts. I mean, free speech is fine. If you want to march and say you don't happy what's going on with Gaza, fine. Mm-hmm. But you're not walking up and down the streets saying kill people and murder certain people because of some...
Well, exactly. Well, that's just incitement to hatred. And there's a lot more the police could do here, and a lot more the government could do. I think your points are very well made, Kevin. Where are you going from and to at the moment?
I'm on my way back from Loughborough to Oakham.
Okay, well, I hope you have a safe journey, Kevin, and I'm glad we're keeping you company, and thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Good work.
Cheers, Kevin. Happy Christmas. That's Kevin in the East Midlands. Joe in Grimsby has some thoughts on the doctors' strike. Joe, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter.
Hi there.
I can't really understand the negativity of people. I mean, I know the world situation has taken over a lot of things, but for me personally, I would pay those doctors more than they deserve. I mean, make that job the best job in the world.
I mean, they get paid an awful lot, Joe. You have doctors who are, you know, you've GPs who are paid £100,000 a year plus. You've got junior doctors who've just got a 29% pay rise. I mean, there are very, very few people who've got a 29% pay rise, Joe.
Yes, well, I mean, I'm not going to go into the history of that, but I do believe a lot of that was payment that was due. I mean, Peter, all I can see in my I've lived through Thatcher, Major, Blair, and I've seen nothing but money wasted, corruption, all manner of things. Make that job the best job in the world.
But I mean,
every young man in this country, man in this country will want that job.
Or young woman. Joe, I just wonder within that. I mean, surely you could say that about lots of jobs. You could say that about hospital porters. You could say that about nurses. You could say that we've got to pay these people huge amounts of money, and that's fine. But the money comes from you and me, and already the NHS has got £200 billion a year to use, and it's a failing service.
Well, you're not wrong with that. I'm not going to dispute that. I mean, anybody. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have used the NHS for.
Well, do you really want to pay more for it? Do you want your taxes to go up to pay for these things that you want?
Well, no, I don't mind. I don't think if you speak to most people in the UK, if they got to pay another £1 a week or whatever on their taxes.
But it's not a £1 a week. It's a lot more than that. It's money that we've got the highest taxation since the Second World War as a proportion of what the country makes. You have a lot of people who can't make ends meet. It's okay for some people, Joe. It might be okay for you. It might be okay for me. But there are loads and loads of people out there who talk to me every single day who say, look, we just cannot afford to pay more tax here.
No. Oh, okay. But, well, they say that. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I don't need Keir Starmer. I don't need Wes Streeting. I need the National Health. And the National Health has been, it's excellent. I'm very fortunate in my area where I live. The doctors are brilliant.
Well, that may well be the case where you live, Joe, but what about the people who are in areas where the NHS isn't so good, who haven't had the same positive experience that you've had? Would they be rushing to their wallets to say, here's more money for the NHS for a service that isn't working, even though we're paying a huge amount of tax?
Well, inefficiency. I mean, are the government efficient?
Well, they're not. But the NHS isn't efficient either. And
well, you're just gonna you're picking on the NHS.
Well, you rang me about the NHS, Joe, and
you need it. You need it. I need it, and all your listeners need it.
Well, I mean, there are debates that can be had about the NHS and the form that it's in, but you can't just say, well, we need the service, therefore it's perfect and we should pay doctors more money.
Well, wouldn't you think it would be advantageous?
No, I don't actually. I think doctors should be paid less. I think doctors are taking us for a ride. I think if you say to someone, Joe, that I'm going to, in good faith, negotiate with you to get a 29% pay rise, which is far more than the vast majority of people watching and listening to this programme will have had in their career, never mind in a year, and then you go back to those people and say, we want more money. I think that's very disingenuous.
In my working life, I've never found that taking money off somebody gives me more money. That does not work. You give the doctors their money and they have to earn it. You make sure they earn it, and then everybody else in that offshoots can say, well...
But wouldn't you say what they're earning at the moment is actually a fair wage? If you're a junior doctor, perhaps 10 years in, and you're earning £120,000, £130,000 a year, which is 3 times as much as the average wage in this country of 30 for a full-time employee of about £35,500 a year. Would you not say that's a reasonable amount of money?
Probably most likely, yes.
Okay, all right.
It's well in comparison.
Okay, well, I don't think it needs to go up, Joe. Listen, thanks for your thoughts anyway. I think we're just going to respectfully disagree on that. Vernon is in Staffordshire and wants to talk about the Bondi attack. Vernon, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Peter, good evening. Respectfully, when are we going to have an adult conversation about the problem in most people's country?
Let's have one now. What do you want to say, Vernon?
There is a culture that unfortunately doesn't want to or doesn't like Western civilization.
Mm-hmm.
And all the Australian government can see, and all they say is the same as the weak British government: we're going to tighten up the gun laws. We're going to do this. They don't ever call out the culture that causes the majority of these incidents. And frankly, I'm sick to death of it. I am a lawful individual who respects the law. When I go to Poland, Peter, I follow the law of the land. When people come to England, they don't. And it's a problem. It's a real problem. And it's always the same people. It's always the same culture. But no one ever talks about it, Peter. We're going to tighten up the gun laws when the gun laws are not the problem. The problem are, Peter, the people. When are we going to call out these people that are bad people?
I've been calling it out all afternoon, Vernon, and I think you're absolutely right to make your point that there is a culture, there is a way of life. It is Islamism, it is radical Islam. That is something that is absolutely, completely and totally against our way of life. It doesn't support, for example, women having jobs. I've got a female producer today who's doing a great job. It doesn't support the people going to a Christmas party tonight wearing low-cut tops and showing some flesh off, which they have every entitlement to do. It doesn't support people. It doesn't support equality between men and women. It doesn't support.
Peter, why do we tolerate it?
We shouldn't. We shouldn't. I completely agree with you, Vernon. When it comes to a culture in Islamism, I'm specifically talking about Islamism, that is against our country, those people should not be allowed to do what they do. I think every girl should be educated in this country. I think we need to look at homeschooling, for example, which is really corrupt. A lot of the time there are people who are homeschooled who are homeschooled really well. It's not something I would choose for a child of mine, I must say, but that is something that certainly we need to call out. We need to look into this. We need a government that has bravery and doesn't tiptoe around it. I know, I agree with you, Vernon. I totally agree with you.
Peter, the Prime Minister's wife is Jewish. How on earth does she feel? I'd love to get Lady Starmer on the phone and say, why do you allow your weak, pathetic, lying husband to say the same thing every time? It's now Australia. Before it was Manchester. Before it was somewhere else and somewhere else and somewhere else. Why do we tolerate it? 2 weeks ago, Peter, I travelled from Stoke-on-Trent to London, and I sat next to a beautiful 28-year-old Pakistani young girl from Burnley. She's a data protection officer, got a massive job in London, and she said to me, the problem, Vernon, is our community. When something happens in our community, we don't deal with it. We sweep it under the carpet. We don't confront it. And we're the same.
And all of what you're talking about feeds into things like the rape gangs as well, because these things are not dealt with. Vernon, great call. I think I agree with you on basically everything you say. In fact, I think I agree with every word you've just said there, Vernon. So we're having an adult conversation. This is the point and the time and the place and the station to have it on. So if you want to add to what Vernon says between now and 7 o'clock, or indeed tomorrow between 4 and 7, 0344 499 1000. I want to play a couple of voice notes before the break. Elle has been in touch on Bondi Beach.
I'm actually from a forces background, and you did exactly what you should do. You disarm them and you make the weapons safe. So he shouldn't have thrown it on the floor, and he shouldn't have fired it, because he will actually get he'll be in trouble for it later. He did exactly as he should have done under the circumstances. So he did a perfect job. He's in the forces, I'm telling you.
Elle, thank you for that. Kelvin has been in touch on the doctor strike as well.
If they want to strike, let them strike. But you know what? In the private sector, we would sack the lot of them. Not one would have a job, and everyone would be replaced with these coming in the country that they say are doctors and nurses. So we're not stuck for doctors and nurses, are we? Just get rid of the dead wood and then replace them with these that are coming in. Okay, we have a language barrier problem, but we can all get around that, can't we? We've all got Google, whatever it's called now, and so there's no problem I don't see. Sack them, and that's the end of it.
Kelvin, thanks for your thoughts on that. A pretty radical solution, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who'll agree with you. Damon in Wigan says, good evening. Good evening, Damon. As you know, I'm a British Army veteran. I 1,000,000% stand with the Jewish community, and this is now a dangerous world for all of us now. Something is coming. Hate is ruling Britain. Thank you, Peter. Mark in Norfolk says, we have a global religious war. Until we have Muslims marching against atrocities like the one in Australia, we are going nowhere. Lots more opinions coming your way. We're also going to take a peek inside the Sun newspaper as well. John Lucas, the night news editor, will be with us in just a second. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
An anonymous person writes, growing up in Belfast in the 70s, I was often taunted if I was a Protestant Jew or a Catholic Jew. Bigotry has always existed, usually the morons that perpetuate it haven't a clue what they're doing as they're too stupid. Signed, Scared, from Belfast. Barbara in London says, afternoon Peter, afternoon Barbara, if they have facilities to house and money to feed and look after illegal migrants in army bases, why haven't they used these bases for homeless veterans sleeping on the streets and left on the rubbish heap, often with mental health problems? It's an absolute disgrace. It seems money is available for foreigners that shouldn't be here in the first place, and not for the real people of this country, and in the case, those who have fought for democracy. And just before we go to our next item, Amanda in London, who says, Starmer has had the ideal opportunity to stop the regular hate marches as the eyes of the world are upon us, and he will be judged, says Amanda. Well, of course, what happened at Bondi Beach will be a big focus as the stories are emerging, the human stories of who everyone is and the victims. They will receive comprehensive coverage in the Sun tomorrow. John Lucas is with us, the night news editor. I'm sure with the time difference and everything, it's been tricky putting all of this together. Just tell us what the Sun will be reporting tomorrow.
Yeah, evening. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's that big time delay, so we're still finding out new information as we're sort of getting to press. So every British newspaper is going to be in the same boat, but we're trying to get up to date as possible. And what we're finding out today, as you say, the names of some of the victims. So we think, you know, probably be our front page tomorrow is the youngest victim. So she's a 10-year-old girl, Matilda. and she was there. This is Matilda B. Britvan, and she was there with her twin sister. And their aunt Lena's spoken about her today. She said, you know,
they've never been separated.
They've never been separated.
Yeah.
You know, she was just a happy kid, always gave me cuddles. I knew her as a bright, joyful, spirited child who brought light to everyone around her, and it really just brings home the absolute sort of depravity of what these two terrorists have done. Completely unjustified, inexcusable attack on this group of people, just Jewish worshippers just gathering on a beach to celebrate, you know, a holy period for them. And when you, as you say, you go through the list of the victims, and it shows you've got a 10-year-old girl, you've got an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor, Alex Klaitman, so he's a retired civil engineer, and obviously the huge irony there is that he would have been about the same age as poor Matilda when he was in the you know, and he's gone through that as a child, and it almost defies belief that you know, he's experienced all that, and he gets to this old age, and it's still going on for the Jewish people. There's a whole, you know, there's a French footballer who's a victim. There's a British-born rabbi who lives in Bondi, known as the Bondi Rabbi, but that's Eli Schlanger. He's actually British.
He's actually friends with Sir Ephraim Mervis, who is the chief rabbi here in the UK. He's been talking about that today as well. I mean, there's so much to this. There's so many human stories.
Yeah, and I mean, what he's saying, what the chief rabbi is saying, is that, you know, this comes out of... We've had all these protests for years now, off the back of Israel's the conflict in Gaza. And what he's saying is these slogans like globalise the Intifada really should be made unlawful, because what you're talking about there, there's lots of people who may well have valid criticisms of Israel's conduct and strong views, but what these protests... The protests aren't about saying, look, Israel needs to do this properly, differently. You know, Israel should do this, Israel should do that. When you're doing these protests and you're using that phrase, and there's the other one, from the river to the sea, what you're talking about there is actually not. You're not saying Israel needs to do something differently. You're saying Israel shouldn't be existing at all.
Completely.
And that is ultimately, it's a genocidal attitude, and you've seen that's caught on with extremists around the world.
And then they toss their head back and say, how has this happened in Bondi? How could it possibly happen? Well, we know why, because we know the situation and we know the environment that has been allowed here.
Yeah, and we've seen it happen in America. There was an attack at a Jewish museum in May. We've seen it happen again in America. There was another incident with where a guy used Molotov cocktails and a flamethrower, and we've had it here as well in Manchester not long ago. Obviously, there's still, you know, there's going to be a court case over that, but we know that you know, the motivations for the guy who was shot dead in that incident. And tomorrow we've got Stephen Pollard writing in the paper,
great man,
doing an op-ed, former editor of Jewish Cron. I don't know if he's probably got some grand title.
I'm not sure, but he is worth reading and worth listening to as well. I think he's on Breakfast tomorrow, actually, on this station, and it's interesting. It'll be very interesting. It's always interesting to hear and see what he has read there. I wonder as well if we could just talk about the story about understanding not being enough. The head of MI6, the first woman, Blaise Mitraeli, who is the youngest ever MI5 chief. Sorry, she's not the first woman. She's the youngest ever, I should say. It's not enough to understand the world. We must shape it too, she says. And she would take covert action to outplay Russia in every way.
Yeah, very punchy from Blaise Mitraeli. She's as you say, she's the youngest MI6 boss, and this will be. She gave this speech in the iconic building. I'm sure lots of people have seen Skyfall. It gets blown up. Hopefully that's not going to happen. But this is the cameras were invited in there. Might be for the first time for something like this, but in any case, it's the first time we're actually going to see her speak and deliver these comments. And it is very punchy, because what she's saying is Vladimir Putin is carrying out this it's almost a war. It's not quite a war. It's a shadow war. Where
we are now operating in a space between peace and war, she said. That really interesting comment.
That's it. Well, and we had the boss of NATO this week saying, Mark Rutte saying, look, we need to prepare for actual hot conflict. But what Machiavelli is saying is Russia are carrying out these sabotage operations we've seen in Poland, we've seen fires here in the UK, we just very recently had a trial finish over that. We've had incendiary devices put on DPD planes, which could have been caused horrible carnage anywhere in the world, wherever these the packages ended up, and lots of this type of stuff. And what she's saying is, well, look, we're not going to stoop to their level, but we are going to take them on. And she actually talked about the SOE, which is the Special Operations Executive, which was the sort of the World War II behind enemy lines sabotage unit. Books have been written, films have been made about them, their legendary activities. And she's suggesting that, well, you know, we need to start doing a bit more of this. So we will never know when we do it. We'll never know that it was us. But are we going to start seeing, you know, lots of accidents? You know, because what she says is, look at the cyber attacks that we've had on infrastructure. We've had drones buzzing airports. We've had aggressive activity at sea, state-sponsored arson and sabotage, and also another crucial thing is propaganda that's
the
sort of
information
fractured
wars.
society. So are we going to get a bit more on the front foot in Russia, start poking this hornet's nest and getting up in Vladimir Putin's face, which I think is probably overdue. But as I say, we won't ever know for sure that it's MI6 that have done it. But I think she's given us a good steer of, you know, future intentions.
Let's put a smile on her face now and talk about Chris Martin stunning wedding guests by secretly turning up to serenade a couple on their big day.
Yeah, so James and Abby Hotchkiss had tied the knot. So this is on Saturday. And little did they know that James's mum, so the mother of the groom, had messaged Coldplay and said, they're a massive fan, could you possibly, Chris Martin, send us a little video message? And they were getting married in Staffordshire. And the band replied and said, we can do you one better than that. Well, quite, you know, a lot better than that, actually. Yeah. And amazingly, Chris turned up to the wedding reception in a beanie hat. Nobody knew who he was, and there was a piano. They'd come in earlier and set up the piano, because apparently Coldplay have to have a special piano and it all has to be tuned.
Okay.
Amazing, and he sat down and started, you know, tinkling the ivories.
Well, I mean, good for Chris Martin for doing that. I mean, it's a lovely thing to do, and slightly different for him to actually point out two people who are in love and happy to tell the world they're in love as well, given what happened the last time.
Maybe he's on one of those sort of he's trying to, you know, get his karma points back somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of like AA, you know, where you're sort of you're fixing the things, fixing the things that have been done before. But I mean, they must have been absolutely thrilled by this.
Yeah, I mean, it's legendary, isn't it? They're going to go down in, you know, with all their mates and family as absolute legends. He played "All My Love," which is from Coldplay's 2024 album, Moon Music.
You didn't know that
which
yesterday,
I knew.
did you?
I didn't even have to. Didn't even have to think about that. I knew. I'm sorry.
Are you a big Coldplay fan?
Not really.
Not massively.
No.
You don't actively dislike them, though, do you?
No, and you know what?
Some people do.
They're terrible for because whenever we have a Coldplay story, they're terrible for coming up with puns on the song names, because they're all just so bland. but our top professional guys down there have come up with something.
I'll fix you.
I'll fix you.
Would be very good. Yeah. I'd certainly support that. Thank you very much indeed. That is John Lucas there, the night news editor at The Sun. You can read all the stories online at thesun.co.uk or in the paper tomorrow. And in fact, another of the papers in our stable, The Times, has an article by me today in the feature section on WhatsApp. So if you want to give that a read as well. Thank you, John. We'll see you tomorrow, probably. Are you with us tomorrow? Possibly? maybe?
Possibly. It's either me or the other bald-headed guy.
You'll merge.
We're
into
all
one.
merged into one now.
Merge into one. There we are. Well, we're going to talk about another person rapidly losing his hair. Quite a number of people rapidly losing their hair as well. And one who has lots of hair, Santa, Father Christmas. He's no stranger to hair because he would apparently vote for the Green Party. Scrooge would go for Reform UK, according to a poll. We'll talk about that absolute nonsense story in just a second. Stay with us.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you very much indeed to everybody who has been in touch. John from Angus says our hearts go out to all the Australians and all Jews throughout the world. All these hate marches going on throughout the world should be stopped. They have been encouraging this behaviour, which only encourages people to do these dreadful events. I only wish people who go on about Hitler and Nazism in politics today, they should realise they're encouraging this, whether it's against the Jews or against politicians. They should be called out as hate crimes and brought to book. And one more before we go to our next story. We need to control our borders and do it the American way. That means everybody must be interviewed, why they're here, why they're staying. Everybody should carry ID cards or driving licenses or paperwork. We need zero immigration into this country for 10 years, says this texter, and end net migration, which has been a disaster for us and the Western world. That is Derek there. Well, there's been a lot of doom and gloom today. I want to put a little smile on our face because this is a ludicrous story from YouGov, the pollsters, who are a very respected polling company. But listen, it's the most wonderful time of the year. They've questioned 2,000 voters and asked them to imagine how Father Christmas would vote at the next general election. And while many believed Santa would follow their own political beliefs, it was far from universal. Well, let's speak to Matthew Smith. He is head of data journalism at YouGov. So Santa would apparently vote for the Green Party. I mean, he's known for red and white, but going for the Green Party is apparently how Santa would be voting. Why do we think this?
Well, just to say, initially, funnily enough, before Coca-Cola came along, Santa's outfit was actually green and white, so it's perhaps a return to his roots. Right. So with this fun Santa polling, what's interesting about it isn't obviously so much what it tells us about Santa Claus or Father Christmas, but about voters themselves. So what it shows is that voters are particularly good at projecting. They're very good at imposing this idea on positive figures that they like, that they think the same way as them, basically. Mm-hmm. So what we see is that although the largest number of people think Santa is a Green voter, the largest number of people within each party think that Santa Claus would vote for their own party.
Oh, that's interesting. And apparently Ebenezer Scrooge would vote for Reform UK. Why do people think that, do you think?
Yeah, well, it's basically the same thing in reverse. Mm-hmm. Effectively, if it's someone you don't like, then you sort of project them onto the group that you like.
Although,
least.
as you know far better than I do, many people and increasing numbers of people are voting for Reform UK. So why would they necessarily say that he would vote for a sort of nasty, grinchy person at Christmas, do you think?
So the thing about Reform UK is that while you're right in saying that they are the party that the largest number of people are hoping to vote for, that's still only about a quarter of people. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Reform UK is that they're very divisive. People either like the party or they really dislike the party. Mm-hmm. So that's where that sort of top vote for sort of against Scrooge is coming from in that regard. It's that people who really dislike Reform UK are imposing Scrooge upon them, basically.
Yes. Very, very interesting stuff, Matthew. Very happy Christmas to you and all at YouGov. Matthew is head of data journalism at YouGov. Santa is, of course, a citizen of the world, as we know, but Lapland is, I think, in Finland, so presumably he'd be voting for Finnish parties rather than British ones, but nonetheless an interesting exercise, and as he says, it tells us a lot about what different people think. Kevin's in Leicester. Kevin, we were trying to get you in earlier and couldn't. Apologies. Thanks for your patience. What would you like to say?
No worries, mate. I'll be as quick as I can because I know your show's nearly done.
No, go for it.
It's just basically referring to these marches. Obviously, it's referring to what happened yesterday at Bondi Beach in Australia.
Yes.
I think it's one thing. I mean, I'll call them hate marches because a lot of it is hate marches.
I agree with you.
Some people have suggested certain words like from the river to the sea and whatnot, it put arresting people for that. I think that will be very difficult. I think if some police officer tries to pull someone aside out of a crowd and say, you said this, because if I didn't say it was him or whatever, I think that will cause a lot of trouble. My opinion, and I don't think anyone suggested this, is pretty straightforward. I know people are allowed freedom of speech and allowed to march and march about certain issues, but you could easily bring a law in to just say you can protest about whatever you like as long as it's something that is referring to this country. Because why protest about something that's in another country?
Well, you might feel strongly about something in another country. I don't think we should ban people about, and also, I mean, I might have very strong views about the American election, for example, or the Uyghurs in China or something. I don't think we should be stopped from protesting about things that are abroad, Kevin.
Well, why? Well, what can we do about it? If you protest about something in America or something, what could anyone do about it?
Well, I don't think most protests has much point in general. But I mean, would you honestly say to those people protesting the war in Iraq, for example, that's something that's happening abroad? Okay, it's about the
no, because that's using the British Army. So that is something our government can do something about. You can protest about a war in Iraq. And you can say, all right, we've listened to your protest, or whatever. But something that's completely not relevant, it would completely stop all of these hate marches because they're on about free Palestine. Israel didn't even react to October to the 7th until weeks after, and they were protesting way before that.
Well, that is absolutely factually correct, Kevin, and thank you for your thoughts on all of that. I think we disagree in the main point, but I appreciate your call nonetheless. Kevin O'Sullivan is here after the news. Hi,
That's
Kevin.
a phrase I don't often hear. That is absolutely factually correct, Kevin.
You remind me of...
No one's ever said that.
You remind me of Homer Simpson, who says, "I just wish someone would call me sir," without adding, "You're causing a scene."
Yeah, that is my story. Obviously, lots about the Bondi Beach attack, and I think for me the story, or what is interesting, is the uncanny parallels between what's happening in Australia and here in Britain. Anthony Albanese, for all his protestations about embracing the Jews, protecting the Jews, he has allowed anti-Semitism to rise and rise in Australia, just as our authorities, our government has allowed it to rise here. They both